All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the CCSD59 Board of Education meeting for November 9th. I will now turn it over to Board President Janice Krinsky.
Thank you, Justin. Welcome to the board meeting tonight. We are we have quite a full agenda, so let's get started right away. Let's call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Krinsky.
Present.
Garlevich.
Present.
Lang.
Present.
Mencia.
Present.
Petrielli here. Reed.
Present.
And Schumacher.
Present.
We're all here.
All right, thank you. Now I am going to ask you if we could move item 6.01, the superintendent search discussion before comments and suggestions for the public. In other words, do it now because we have so many comments and I just didn't want our search company to have to sit through all of that since it's not relevant to the work that they're doing. Are you okay with that?
You need a motion or?
No, we don't need a motion. I just need to know if the
I'm
board
good with it.
thinks
Fine.
it's okay. All right, I see a lot of thumbs up. Okay, so why don't we move to the superintendent search from School Exec Connect? Jake Chung is with us today. Jake, take it away.
Good evening. My name is Jake Chung and I represent School Exec Connect. Dr. Tim Schimpf, my co-consultant, is unable to join us tonight, but we spent countless hours reviewing the information that was collected and putting together the profile that I will share with all of you this evening. The PowerPoint is a condensed version of the full profile executive summary that you've received. Before I do begin, I do want to thank the members of the District 59 Board of Education for the opportunity to address all of you this evening. In addition, I do want to publicly thank Mr. Ross Vittori, Mrs. Cindy Pullen, Mr. Justin Sampson, and Mr. Ben Gray for their assistance as we move forward with our search. Your hospitality has been outstanding, and both Dr. Schimpf and I have really enjoyed the opportunity to converse with all of your stakeholders. District 59 really does have much to be proud of.
Thank you.
And then if I could have the PowerPoint projected, thank you. And if we could move to the second slide, please. The District 59 board tasks School Exec Connect consultants to meet with various focus groups to hold open forums. But because of COVID-19, we did this in a different manner and met with everyone in a virtual setting. We were also tasked to create an online survey and requested information from District 59 school staff, parents, community members, and we also received some information from a few students. The information that we collected were then merged into themes, and this has assisted us in the building of the new superintendent profile. Next. We'll review the contents of the new superintendent profile later in the presentation, but as a reminder, this was created to help School Exec Connect consultants screen potential candidates, provide an insight and potential interview questions to ask candidates, and to share with the board a summary of the District 59 stakeholders' thoughts, and to allow candidates in the community to learn more about the strengths and opportunities for growth in District 59. Next. There were 9 focus groups and 2 sets of open forums. The community liaisons also helped to meet with the Spanish community for us. And there were a total of 109 attendees at the focus groups and the forums. We also had 394 online survey responses that ran from October 15th through November 8th. I would say if there was an opportunity for growth, we would have hoped for some additional responses from the District 59. As highlighted in your executive summary, there were approximately 172 survey responses from the staff. Nevertheless, we did have feedback from over 500 individuals, and this assisted us in analyzing the general themes that came forward. Next. A sampling of the questions asked to the focus groups centered around the information below. What are your district's greatest strengths and attributes? What are your district's greatest challenges? What should the priorities be for the new superintendent? what are the most important characteristics and skills of the new superintendent, and what would they need to possess to be successful in the district. So that was a sampling. The 9 focus groups were comprised of 86 attendees, and there were 23 attendees in the open forum. Both Dr. Schimpf and I would like to thank the participants for their openness and candor in sharing their thoughts about District 59. There really is much to be proud of here, and the reputation as a destination district is already attracting many candidates. The individuals in the focus groups and forums highlighted a variety of district strengths that highlighted much of the information listed here. I'll just go through a quick summary. Large, vibrant, and diverse school communities with supportive parents, families, and community leaders. High quality and passionate professionals, that was echoed time and time again. Access to a wealth of instructional resources and a strong coaching model, strong financial stability and resources, excellent technology infrastructure, safe, secure, and very well-maintained schools and facilities, and just really great students as well. So those were some of the strengths that were listed. If we take a look at some of the district challenges, individuals that participated in the focus groups and forums also highlighted some areas of growth. Some of the things that came up were lack of consistency within the district curriculum, need to collaborate further, take a look at the essential mastery of skills across all grade levels. Diversity was a piece that really presented itself as an opportunity for growth, inconsistent programming, needs for greater parent and community involvement, building further trust among stakeholder groups, the branding of the district and finding opportunities to celebrate and acknowledge the value of the staff, continuing to grow and progress and maintaining the traditions and community feel to really ensure more buy-in from stakeholders, and really finding effective methods for communicating to all stakeholders as well. That was another common theme. In addition, finding opportunities to take a look at high quality instructional practices that really met the needs of the students. So those were some of the perceived challenges that were shared with us. When we take a look at the individuals that participated in the focus groups and forums, they also highlighted what they would hope that a new superintendent would focus in on during the first year. They were hopeful that the new superintendent would come in and build relationships and make connections with students, staff, and community, just really be able to be approachable and really be authentic. They really were hoping that there'd be an individual that would emphasize diversity and cultural awareness, find opportunities to connect with all the stakeholders, and really continue to find opportunities for improvement. There was also a thought that the new superintendent would really find opportunities to develop relationships or strong relationships with the board, along with various stakeholders, and really be able to communicate a clear message and really create short and long-term focus areas based on the strategic plan and continue to push that forward. Then they were also hopeful that the new superintendent would come in and spend a great deal of time observing, listening, being visible, spending time in the schools and classrooms, and also being involved in the community. So those were some of the areas that the focus group shared. In addition, they also really talked about what a new superintendent could also participate in, and that would really be taking a look at finding opportunities to evaluate the curriculum work and really find opportunities to make that more consistent, find research-based opportunities and direction for staff, take a look at the development of that curriculum along with the assessments to monitor student learning and growth, and then utilize the data to drive instruction. There really was also a need for formal and informal two-way communication with stakeholders, and really to develop a cohesive administrative team that really focus on building leadership capacity at the district level. So those are some of the additional thoughts. When we take a look at the desired skills and characteristics that the focus groups and forums had shared, they're really looking for a superintendent that's passionate and that is invested in District 59. Really an individual that's looking to stay long-term and has an experience working in a district that has similar demographics. They want the new superintendent to be highly visible at schools and community events and find opportunities to be very active within the District 59 community. They want that individual to be relationship driven. They want the individual to use the attributes of being really just genuine, someone that they could approach, and really somebody that's going to foster the high levels of morality within the district. And they're looking for a person that's visionary and someone that's going to be a strategic thinking leader who can really establish direction and create a roadmap and have action plans that can really be pushed ahead and move forward. And then also finding opportunities to evaluate the effectiveness of the key performance indicators. Finally, they're looking for somebody that's humble and confident, somebody that's going to be transparent, and someone that's going to be collaborative, who is also flexible and open-minded as well. In addition to some secondary characteristics, they want an individual who's going to be a collaborator, somebody that's going to be a team builder, somebody that can really develop a positive rapport, work with the board in an effective manner, have a knowledgeable understanding of school finances, and really be a strong communicator, somebody that's articulate, someone that's really going to be an active listener, and somebody that respects and appreciates the diversity of opinions, thoughts, and ideas throughout the entire district. They're hoping somebody that has successful elementary and junior high leadership, somebody that understands the needs of the students, that really would support the development of the whole child as well. They want the superintendent to be an advocate for all staff and students, someone that can motivate, inspire, and support high levels of growth and achievement. If we take a look at the survey demographics, we had 195 parents that responded. We had 147 certified staff members, 32 non-certified staff members, 11 community members, and then 9 other individuals that were designated in the other category.
Good.
If we take a look at the survey participant information, and we take a look at some of the educational strengths that came up based on the information that was shared, the quality of the teaching staff was something that was echoed within the survey results. 69% of the survey participants checked on this. And then the use of technology for learning was also another strong area. So those were some of the strengths that were identified within the survey. If we take a look at needed educational improvements, if we take a look at some of the themes that arose, establishing a challenging and quality curriculum came to the forefront. Readiness for next educational levels were also there, and providing opportunities for students beyond the classroom were also pieces that individuals checked off within the survey. When we take a look at the organizational management strengths, some of the things that rose to the forefront were having clean and attractive schools along with student safety. We know that the facilities within District 59 are outstanding. There's also a sense that student safety is really at the forefront in terms of what you do. So those were some of the organizational and management strengths that came to the forefront. If we take a look at the needed organization and managerial improvements, when we took a look at the survey information, staff morale was an area of improvement that individual respondents commented on. When we take a look at communication of parents and community as well, that was also another piece of information that individuals focused in on within the context of the survey. Priorities for the new superintendent. The survey group responded that student growth, along with the well-being of students, should really be at the top of their priorities. So if you take a look at this particular slide, that highlights many of the priorities that the survey respondents were looking for from the new superintendent within the course of the first year. If we take a look at the characteristics and skills needed for the new superintendent as well, the survey respondents really commented on having the new superintendent have a deep knowledge of curriculum and instruction and understanding how students learn. They were really hoping that the individual could be collaborative and it really included others in decision-making. This new superintendent really should have a clear vision and was an individual that inspired others. The new superintendent would continue to build good teams and really bring out the best in individuals. It really should be child-centered, have warm people skills, and really be easy to talk to. So many of these characteristics really mirrored many of the things that the focus groups had shared out as well. So based on the review of the survey data and information drawn from the focus groups and forums, the following new superintendent profile was developed by both Dr. Schimpf and myself. All the information is in your executive profile summary, and a version of the new superintendent profile will also be listed on your website after this evening, so individual candidates along with community members can take a look at this new superintendent profile. But really, as we took a look at the themes that arose, the community members and stakeholders really were looking for an individual that embraced the diversity of the school district and really supported equity for all. They wanted an individual who's going to be a leader who could lead the conversations and really find ways to enhance communication, consistency of thought, along with this practice when taking a look at equity. They wanted individuals, the individual superintendent, to create initiatives and programs to increase celebration, student learning achievement, along with finding opportunities to create greater community connectiveness. They're hoping that the new superintendent really could be a visionary leader and a strategic thinker who is forward thinking, that really could inspire and empower others and lead in development of both short and long-term planning to really develop a high level of academic and operational success for the district. And they were really hoping that the person could be genuine, authentic, and caring, and personable and transparent, flexible, really approachable, and could really be trusted throughout the district, really for fostering some high positive overall morale. As we continue on, they are hoping that when we take a look at the superintendent profile, the new superintendent will really maintain high levels of visibility within the schools and community, develop authentic relationships with all the stakeholders. I think one of the key pieces that came up on time and time again were really having a superintendent who exhibited a deep knowledge of teaching and learning at the pre-K through 8th grade level. That included understanding curriculum, assessment, and instruction, and really finding ways to build upon the current foundation, but also moving the district forward as they took a look at new pieces and possibilities really dedicated towards developing the whole child, but maintaining a foundation that could be built as well. When we take a look, as we continue to take a look at the profile, really a superintendent that was going to develop and build a strong and authentic partnership with the Board of Education, really was an individual who was going to be a person of integrity and openness, and really an individual who could continue to reflect on both the practices that were identified as strengths for the district, but also opportunities for growth and improvement as well. As we take a look at the profile, as we continue forward, really an individual that displays high levels of collaboration, actively seeks out the involvement of staff and community and the board in decision-making. As I had mentioned before, somebody that was humble and confident and open-minded and transparent and collaborative. Those are many of the characteristics that we identified from School Exec Connect. We wanted to also highlight the new superintendent should be an outstanding communicator who understands the needs of all the stakeholders and creates a variety of methods and venues to connect the groups and individuals together. So that was really going to be really essential as the new individual works to create a positive image within the district and really finds opportunities to celebrate the success of the school district itself. As both Dr. Schimpf and I had an opportunity to talk with the various stakeholders, there was a great sense of pride that was shared by almost all the stakeholders in terms of why District 59 was so special to them. So the new superintendent is going to have to quickly understand some of the past practices in the history and then find opportunities to continue to celebrate that piece. And then another piece that came up is they were really looking for a superintendent that was going to really model active listening amongst the stakeholders and really support stakeholder voice and input. So that was going to be very important as well. They wanted, as we started to take a look at some final pieces within the profile, we identified the new superintendent will have to come in and really have some financial skills and understand how to distribute resources in an equitable manner in order to continue to promote financial stability within the district. They're really going to have to understand some of the practices and make sure that the alignment of district resources matches the goals, strategic plan, and initiatives along with the priorities of the school district. We think that somebody that can demonstrate a proven track record of success as an educator and leader to effectively impact student achievement along with the district outcomes, along with being able to develop the capacity of others, is an essential strength that we'll be looking for during our interviews as we start to take a look at the candidates that have applied. We also want to make sure that the individual is going to be willing to take risks and be an active risk taker, but also make some hard decisions. Being a superintendent isn't always easy, and they're going to have to make some decisions that may not always be necessarily appreciated initially, but hopefully in the long run, it will be. And as I had mentioned earlier, we're going to want somebody that understands how to utilize data in order to promote how the district can move forward. They also want, as we take a look at the profile, we want a student-centered leader who advocates for all stakeholders, students, and emphasizes the advancement and improvement of student achievement along with their outcomes. So that was the profile that both Dr. Schimpf and I had put together. As we take a look at some of our next steps, Dr. Schimpf and I will begin conducting interviews this Saturday. We'll also conduct a second round of interviews on Sunday, November 22nd. We have a strong pool of candidates that have already applied or are in the process of applying. We'll then present a slate of 5 to 7 candidates to District 59's board on November 30th. The District 59 board will then look to conduct its first set of interviews on December 8th and December 9th. The District 59 board will then look to conduct its second set of interviews on December 15th and December 17th. And the District 59 board will look to take action on the final candidate sometime in January of 2021. And the new superintendent will begin their duties on July 1st, 2021. That concludes my report. Are there any questions from the board at this point?
Yeah, Dr. Chung, I have a question for you. Well, first, thank you and for all this information and the work you guys have been doing in the search. We greatly appreciate it. I think it's great that we had 9 focus groups, 394 responses, feedback from 500 individuals. How is that? Is for a district of our size, is that type of response average? Is that what we were expecting? Should we have gotten more or less? Are we above the line there?
Robert, that's a great question. We were average.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we were above average, and I know that we had worked to try to get some more feedback and information from our staff members here in District 59. But as we take a look at the previous searches that School Exec Connect has conducted, it's about average for a district of our size.
I have a question, Jake. The dates that you presented for us to interview and to finalize and so forth, are those dates inked in cement, or can we change the dates? Because it seems a little bit difficult to me with the holidays and all for us to get this accomplished as soon as you think in January. I would think that it might take us a little bit longer.
Those dates will be dependent on how the board wants to proceed. They can be changed, but I would suggest that we continue to stay within the framework itself. There are other superintendent searches that are being conducted from other school districts. So we want to be competitive in terms of our timeline. That's why we've aggressively looked to take a look at that presented timeline in itself at this point.
I think it's fine to have a timeline, but I just want to be sure that if we are not happy and it's not moving along as well as we think, or if we need to do more in-depth examination of any candidates, that we have the time to do that.
That's a great point. I am very excited about the candidates that have applied for District 59 at this point. As Dr. Schimpf and I have reviewed the candidate profiles and taken a look at the information that they've presented to us, there are some really outstanding candidates. We've already had a chance to do a number of phone screenings as well. And many of the candidates have sought out District 59 because they've stated that this was their destination district to eventually lead. So I'm very excited about that. So there are some outstanding candidates that have already applied or in the process of applying.
Jake, this is Janice Krinsky. Could you tell us how many people have applied or are in the process of applying?
We have over 30 candidates at this point, and we know that we continue to get more feelers on a daily basis. Because we have that amount of candidates, we wanted to split up the interviews on 2 separate weekends, and if we have to, we'll add additional time as well. But we've had some very, very outstanding individuals that have already reached out. I know that even today there are other individuals that are seeking out the opportunity and saying, hey, we're still going to apply. So just be aware that we're going to start hitting that application piece. So both Dr. Schimpf and I are very excited about the candidates that have already sought out District 59. And once again, these are candidates that have continued to share out that this is their quote unquote dream job.
Hey, Dr. Chung, another question for you. The 30 candidates with, I think a lot of the concerns we had was doing the search with COVID and with the pandemic. 30 candidates, that sounds like a lot. Are you seeing any impact with COVID in the search, or is it par for the course?
I would say at this point, we're par for the course, and knowing that the application deadline has not ended at this point, we'll have additional candidates that will apply. I know that taking a look at even some other searches from other districts that occurred pre-COVID, there are individual school districts that were almost the same size or just a little bit smaller than District 59 that were sometimes dealing with only 20 some odd candidates within the pool itself. So we're a little above average. I think more importantly than the quantity of the candidates that apply, it's really the quality of the individuals. And I think that's why both Dr. Schimpf and I are very excited about the individuals that have already applied.
Good. We only need one. We need one that's the right one.
I think once the board gets to see the candidates that we'll present to you, it'll be a very difficult decision for the board to continue to narrow down the pool and then eventually land on the final candidate. There really are some outstanding individuals.
Well, we're getting really used to a lot of difficult decisions. So what's another one?
Yes.
Jake, this is Courtney. Thank you so much for the presentation. I found it really helpful. And my main question was articulated by Robert about the quality and quantity of the pool in COVID, but that is an encouraging answer. And then I guess my other question is just making sure I understand in terms of our diverse population group. I know we were able to use some of our community support staff to reach out and collect opinions from our non-English speaking population. Can you give us a sense of what feedback we were able to gather that was Spanish speakers, Polish speakers, and other foreign language primary speakers?
Yes, that's an outstanding question as well. So we had 14 individuals that filled out the Polish survey, and then we had 7 individuals that filled out the survey that was in Spanish. And much of the information, once again, correlated with the other survey results. Many of the individuals were looking for an individual that was student-centered, but also had a strong understanding of the curricular pieces as well. I know that some of the comments that were shared that were written in really wanted individuals that understood the complexity of the curriculum piece. There were also individuals, a handful of individuals that shared out, hopefully that the new superintendent coming in could open up schools as well. But if we take a look at the general themes, it really was consistent based on the information that was shared with all of the rest of the stakeholders as a whole. We were very happy that the community liaisons assisted us in gathering that information. Many thanks to Ross Vittori for assisting us with that. And then we really found that we were able to collect some information that really helped us better understand their own perspectives.
Thank you.
Hey, Jake, are you able to disclose whether or not we received out-of-state candidates?
We have at this point. As I had shared out when we made our initial pitch, we thought we would, and we have.
Okay.
Jake, can we, are we going to be able to see any of their background ahead of time, or is that just on the day of the interview? I'm just curious.
I'm going to work through, or both Dr. Schimpf and I will work that information through. We typically share that information on the day of the interviews itself, just to protect the confidentiality of the candidates, knowing that the initial group will be between 6 to 7 individuals. One of the things, since we are doing a closed search, is really trying to protect the confidentiality. You do have a number of sitting superintendents that have applied from other districts, and they'll want to strategically share out that information with their own districts once they continue to advance through the process. So in order to really just protect the confidentiality, we really try to limit the information that we divulge to the board and just try to make that strategic.
Okay, thank you.
It's Mardell. Your last answer confused me a bit. We will not get the information ahead of time, but when we do get it, it will be complete. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
I'm hoping that we'll get it a little beforehand so that we can read it through and prepare ourselves for when we actually have the interview. Would that be what we can expect?
We typically share it with the group, but Janice, I'll work with Dr. Schimpf. We'll connect with you and we'll talk about this further if that's okay.
Okay, absolutely. That's fine.
Even if it's just the day before.
Well, we'll share. We'll have a conversation and share the information with everyone.
Good.
I know having some lead time is helpful to think it through. Any other questions for Dr. Chung? All right, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to moving on with this process. I think it's been really smooth so far. It's been great that you've collected information. The last time this was done, we didn't even manage to get any candidates. So the not candidates, feedback from the community. So the process that you followed this time was really strong and very helpful to us in understanding community needs and concerns. Thank you again. I'm looking forward to the next step.
Thank you very much. And as a former District 59 student, I'm so proud of the hard work that all of the stakeholders have continued to put in and the great work that District 59 continues to move forward with. So thank you for this opportunity.
And it was fun having an old student coming back. Thank you, Jake.
Yes, thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Okay, let's move on with our agenda. And let me see. I have it blocked now by all the stuff. All right, here we go. This is now time for comments and suggestions from the public. I had asked some people to shorten their written reply so that it would fit in the 3 minutes. I think we're okay to go. Most of the comments tonight are about opening the schools, but there are a smattering of other comments. So with that being said, I'm gonna go. The first one is from Margaret Ignut. And it says, "Good day. I'm reaching out to the district once again in hopes of getting my voice heard for the sake of my children and also for the amazing teachers. In my opinion, the district made a huge mistake by not opening schools in August, even September. It would have given the children and teachers an opportunity for them to meet and get to know each other. It would have given kids an opportunity to see each other after such a long time. There were many surveys sent out to parents giving us hope, and every time our voices were never heard. There were many people that wanted their kids to return to school. There were also a few that didn't. Once again, give those parents that wanted to send their kids back that option." On October 30th, in the afternoon, my kids and I were preparing their back to school supplies, so excited to go back the following week. We even bought extra Kleenex and disinfectant wipes for the classroom. Their joyful faces honestly made me cry. They could not wait to go back. Then the horrible email came in that they would not return. My tears of happiness turned into tears of sadness along with theirs. Please understand that your hybrid model was just right. Send them into school for a few hours for 2 days a week. And also the classroom size was just perfect. Why would you change that? Why would you not want these kids to go back? Why would you make the teachers work harder with the extra remote planning? Think about all the schools in the area. Why are they going back and not us? Why are kids in the park districts that do remote learning not getting sick? Why are the Catholic and private schools in our areas not shutting down? Is it because there's money involved and you have to pay for this type of education? I always stood up for District 59 and all the amazing things that this district has to offer. When people were bashing the district for low scores and not great ratings, I stood up to them and confronted them. The amazing dual language program that this district offers, I rooted for that from the beginning. Now I ask the district to stand up for the sake of our kids and let them back in the school. It's not fair that kids are falling behind. I do not want to hear another teacher say, "That's okay, he's doing great." No, he is not doing great. He doesn't understand and he doesn't have a teacher to help him explain. I am doing the best I can for my kids, but they deserve an education, a real education in the classroom. Please help me out and allow the kids that want to be in school in a classroom with a teacher, not a computer. I really appreciate it. Signed, Margaret Idmut. Okay, the next one is from Jen B. Hello, I'm writing today very concerned about the change in our return to school plans. Yet again, I understand the complexity of the situation we are all facing, but urge you to continue to think of the kids and students as number one stakeholders right now. Around 60% of the student population chose to want to go back to school, and although many of them want to go back, a lot of them need to be back for their mental and emotional health. I was hesitant to write today because I know how the board has approached the subject with a very risk-averse lens, but we need to have our youngest students back in class. In the past few meetings, the leadership board presented a great mitigation plan, health and safety procedures, so we know they are ready. I urge you to discuss moving forward with at least our K-5 students who you talked about last meeting needing to go back. Although I rarely compare our situation to others, this time I must say the difference between our students and students in other districts is the board. The situation and virus is the same in Palatine, Des Plaines, Northbrook, or Roselle, but those boards saw the possibility of their students back to class. This is a very subjective decision, which means it's now your turn to adjust your focus to getting kids back to school. Let's focus on our students and teachers, and if the metrics in our student population and teacher capacity works, it's time we make the leap and go on November 16th. I'm sure all those parents who wrote for public comments over the past 2 to 3 meetings feel the same way, but I'm concerned that you are again not incorporating any of that feedback. Thank you, and I urge you to start thinking of how we can do this to support us, the parents who can make the best decisions for our children if we have a choice. Jen B., mom of a Brentwood 3rd grader. Okay, the next one is from John Johnston. Hi, as a parent of 2 kids in our elementary school, I hope you take the previous input from the many, many letters you read through the public comments and mine seriously, as I'm very exhausted about the lack of urgency you as board members are showing in the decision to return to school this past week. Watching across a few streets over where Mount Prospect parents are still sending kids to school and many other schools continue to do. I'm perplexed how their boards have faith in their principals and teachers to make it work, and our board doesn't. The schools are ready, the staff is ready, and at some point you have to be ready. It's now time. This is no longer about your personal choice or feelings if it's safe or not. State guidelines are telling us it's doable. Other districts from August are showing us it's doable. And now neighborhood districts are showing us it's doable after returning over the past few months and even last week. The numbers may fluctuate in our zip codes for months and months, but the mitigation plans we have based on presentations are there to focus on our students. Take the decision seriously this time around. We need kids in school, parents need the choice, and we need a board that represents, if not the majority, but a large population that's been stripped of a choice from the beginning. Get the kids back in class. Signed, John, parent of Forest View students. Okay, the next one is from Casper Schurik. Dear board members, due to the rise in cases of COVID, it is clear that you may be hesitant to reopen our schools. However, you need to think about the mental well-being of the students at this time. You have been at home for too long. They have been at home for too long. When our son attended class in October under the trial period of the hybrid model, we noticed a huge positive change in him. Knowing that all of our buildings and classroom teachers are very well prepared to welcome the students back, our family feels very confident in sending our 2 children to school. We just need the school to be open. In fact, as stated above, our son had the opportunity to participate in the trial run of the hybrid model at the end of October. He attended 4 sessions over a 2-week period of time. He really enjoyed going to school and came home very excited after the in-person interactions with his teacher and the opportunity to be with his peers. One day, he even told us that he wished he could attend school every day. His teachers worked very hard to follow all of the protocols, and the school leadership was more than prepared for the student arrival, transitions, dismissal, and just the overall presence of all the learners in the building. Their communication was phenomenal, and if all of the expectations are followed by the stakeholders, we don't see why students can't return, especially the primary groups in grades K through 2. As you know, many of the classrooms will be small in size, which is another reassuring factor to why the students should be at school, not behind screens. In the case of our son, his class size was under 5 students and they were sitting 6 feet apart in masks. With that said, there was a low chance of any transmission. If these protocols are continued to be followed, we are confident that the transmission within the school buildings will remain low to non-existent, especially since the self-certification forms are a must prior to sending their kids to school. Again, we understand the rates are changing, but if the actual school building is not impacted, students should attend until there is a visible risk and or someone tests positive. We are confident that the BOE will make the appropriate decision that will take into account our biggest stakeholders, the children. Signed, Casper Schurik. Okay, the next one is from Sue Collins. Hello, as you start discussions yet again on return to school, keep in mind we have reworked the topic already various times during these meetings. It's plain and simple. If we cannot find a way to return to school next week, we need to find new board members that represent the entire community in our district versus their own personal feelings and agendas and maybe some fear about this situation. My child has special needs, and as much as we want to say remote learning is successful, it's simply not, especially for elementary level, which you have clearly stated during a previous meeting that parent feedback is unsatisfactory. Wait. Okay. To realize that our youngest children, 5-year-olds in kindergarten, have yet to start actual learning in an actual school is shocking. If we can't make a big leap, let's start with our youngest. Send them in K through 3, K through 5. Anything is better than nothing at this point, as we have strung along for 3 months, lack of action on your part. See how it goes. Our teachers who we say we have faith in, let's give them encouragement. Just go. Signed, Sue Collins. Okay. This one is from Maria H. Hi, What is happening differently in our schools compared to other schools in neighboring districts that we cannot start sending kids back? Do we have a shortage of teachers, custodians, or other key functions in the schools? I know we have good health and safety plans. So unless you are forthcoming why we are not sending kids back, it sounds like you are not making good decisions for our kids. Each person has the right to be concerned for safety in this pandemic on a personal level, but a school is one of the most important functions and needs to have the ability for kids to be in school. It's time, even if you are uncomfortable about the situation in the world, the parents expect to have the choice. Open up the schools and let's show each other we are responsible, respectful, and prove to you that we can make it work. Maria, a mom of a Juliet Low student in 4th grade. Okay, this one is from Jose Martinez. Hello, I want to tell you that we need to have children in school now. The virus may be here long or not, who knows, but schools need to be open because no one can say it's really good for kids to be on a computer all day. School is there for kids to go to school, not to sit empty. We try hard to make a good life for our kids. Moved here to the district a few years back, and now the district is not doing what we would like. We should like other schools to open the school now. The children need it. Stop and listen. It's not your opinion only. It should be a majority of what students need, or at least can do, to give it an option. Our daughter does not have space at home. She needs to be in school to help make her successful. Thank you, Jose M. Father. Public comment from Rick Jackson. Hi, thank you for your time and dedication as board members. Having said that, I'm afraid you are stuck and unable to see the bigger picture. Rather than saying, let's get the kids back, you are finding reasons each time to delay the return. The board needs to find a way tonight to get our kids back to school. It's doable. It's happening around us, and even with challenges and pauses due to cases in classrooms in those other districts, the process continues in other schools with less resources and less dollars somehow make it work. The feedback I've heard from parents in districts with kids back to school has only been positive. I have a child that emotionally needs to be in a school building, in a school setting. Thinking about chance, by bad luck, I may have chosen to live in the wrong zip code without being able to know that when I bought my house, because I do not have the option to have my child in school, and with your lack of progress, we are still not providing that option. This is not equitable, especially for kids with needs, but even those kids that are in poverty. You cannot, with good conscience, say you are making decisions with them in mind. Their parents need to have this option, and at this point, you are standing in the way of that. Please work hard tonight to make a go for next week. Signed, Rick, parent of Salt Creek Elementary child. Okay, the next one is from Ms. Rayofsky. Hello, as a mother of 2 kids at an elementary school in District 59, I am writing to let you know how disappointed my family and I are in the decision to not open schools this upcoming week. Please consider all the kids that want to go back and also all the parents that need to go to some kind of work to provide for their families. Parents as well as kids are suffering. The class sizes at the schools are not that big. Therefore, separating them in 2 groups for a few hours will be just fine. Also, keep in mind that parents do understand how unsafe it is to send their kids to school when they are sick. They understand what is going on in the world. Parents will not be sending their kids to school when they are sick. Please, I beg you, open up the schools for the sake of our kids. They need an education. Look at surrounding districts and see how well they are doing. Look at Catholic schools in our area. They have been open since August, full days. Once again, I beg you, keep these kids in school and open the schools. Allow kids who want to do remote the option to stay at home. But honestly, most would rather be back. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Signed, Ms. Rayofsky. The next one is from the DEA Board Relations Committee. For those who are listening and might not know what the DEA is, that is the District Education Association. It is the union, the teachers union for District 59. So this is from Judy Webb and the other members of the DEA Board Relations Committee. Good evening. On behalf of the DEA Board Relations Committee, we would like for the following public comment to be shared at the board meeting Monday, November 9th, 2020. Thank you, DEA Board Relations. As representatives of the District Education Association, we wanted to take a moment during this November meeting to honor our 7 dedicated board members and celebration of School Board Members Day, November 15th, and express our appreciation. We wanted to take this opportunity to thank each member of our Board of Education for your dedication and leadership to our students, staff, and schools. We recognize that you are all volunteers of your time and talents for the benefit of our students and community residents. In particular, this year, your responsibilities have involved decisions and choices that not only relate to regular school system operations, but additional decisions that impact families in ways never before. As school board members, you must also weigh your decisions in terms of the health and safety of students, teachers, and members of the community. We are grateful for your commitment. We acknowledge the challenges in making decisions that directly impact safety in our community every year, and especially this year with all of the additional challenges. We appreciate your due diligence as you continue to work to ensure that the decisions of the district are equitable for all and that everybody is given the resources and opportunities to be successful for life. With appreciation, Board Relations of the DEA. Okay. Hello. This is from Kathy Distant. I'm not sure if that's abbreviated or not. Hello. Reflecting back over the last 3 months of the slow progress we have made to get the kids back to school, it's really frustrating to see the reversal of that. We need to have choice, and that choice is being stripped from parents that need this to make it work for their livelihoods. But more importantly, for students, our most important individuals in this situation. I have a child that is struggling, and after reaching out to teachers and others and getting as much remote help, quote unquote, remote help, it has become clear I am waiting for the day to open up schools so the piece of the puzzle that he's been missing is complete. Shake off your personal opinion about this virus. Decide on a go for next week based on state guidelines which support in-person learning. They are there to drive this decision. Be better, do better for our students and for parents who deserve an option for in-person. Signed, Kathy, who's a Devonshire parent. Okay, the next one is from Mika Koval. To say, dear board members, to say that I'm disappointed is an understatement. What is the magic formula that is going to allow us to sound the all clear? Is it 0 cases? For a while, the goal was to flatten the curve, but now it seems as if there is, in fact, no end game. Is it the vaccine? It took 25 years for a safe-to-use chickenpox vaccine to be developed. We have a flu vaccine that is only 40 to 60% effective. That is generous. The last 2 years, it was more like 20 to 25%. Less than half of the US population chooses to get one, and roughly 20,000 Americans still die annually due to the flu or flu complications. How long are we going to cancel, postpone, reconsider? Now we are advised against in-person school until case positivity rates fall under substantial risk for transmission again. Our district failed to open schools in previous weeks when the metrics supported safe in-person instructions. Didn't even take a chance to see if it could work. What if November numbers are the same as October's? Then what? What if next March is worse than this March? Cases in general population should not determine if kids are in school. Cases in each school should be a metric just like the other districts are moving to. Many schools have had cases and have dealt with them accordingly. It is not reasonable to think that there would be none. It's more important to recognize that schools close but reopen after getting through cases. The bigger issue here is that there have not been any large-scale outbreaks in any local districts. D59 has not even taken a chance to see if it could work. D54 has chosen to go remote. D205 is remote. D15 is open. D21 is open. Bloomingdale is open, Itasca is open. The point is we won't know if we can be successful because we haven't even tried. D54 has chosen to, oh wait, I read that already, I'm sorry. Transmission in schools is defined as spread of the virus between people during interactions in the school setting. While there have been positive COVID-19 cases of staff and students in schools, most of these infections have occurred outside of the school setting. If there is suspected in-school transmission, then the affected classrooms and schools should temporarily shift to remote learning. Weighted against the substantial harms to children from keeping schools closed, elementary schools should at least offer in-person learning. I think there's a pretty good base of evidence now that schools can open safely in the presence of strong safety plans and even at higher levels of case incidence than we had suspected. Facing an immense second wave, some countries in Europe, like the Netherlands, have instituted restrictions on indoor dining, private gatherings, and public transportation. None of this was applied to schools because education is too important. Time to get kids back in school and stop making excuses. There's a lot of capitals in this. And I understand your frustration. We know unequivocally that live school is better than the alternative and that the least advantaged children are at the greatest risk of falling further behind when they cannot attend in person. And yet we have allowed the scales to tip at all too familiar angles. What children ultimately need and what the deadening constraints of Zoom learning cannot adequately transmit is exuberance. Children need to feel championed. They need people to see what they are doing, to cheer them on, to rally them to care and response. Of all the tragedies emerging from the pandemic, a generation of children left to teach themselves on sofas and bunk beds may be the most insidious. How these children, crucially the young ones, develop literacy skills will fare academically is the great uncertainty. Time to stop making excuses and get our kids back in school. Signed, Monica Kowal, mom of 6-year-old Leon and 8-year-old Milena, bilingual students at Claremont. The next one is from Sam John. Help. We need someone's help to get our kids back to school. That is the reoccurring bad dream I'm living each month as our district changes direction yet again. We as parents need to have the ability to make a decision, but the option needs to be there. This is where your responsibility comes in. Give us a choice. Let's try to make it happen this month and calendar year. If we don't, I'm afraid your hesitancy will continue to linger for months and months until the summer break. And what then? We will be at the same spot. Unless our teachers are not working for health reasons or our student population is affected, we should be in school. Please represent the entire student parent population here and stop making decisions that are one-sided. The goal should be for our children, our kids to return to school, and your job is to focus on that and how we can make that happen sooner than later, versus continually asking yourself, should we make it happen because what's in the news or because you see behaviors in the community you don't like. We need to help our most underprivileged children, our special ed and needy children, and that is to give them a choice to go back to school. Signed, Sam, parent of a 4th grader in Brentwood. Okay. The next one is from Sunil Bawe. Dear Board of Education, my name is Sunil Bawe and I am a former member of the school board. I live in Arlington Heights. In 2016, this school board voted to eliminate the instructional materials fees. At the time, I remember that many thought this was a remarkable achievement, but in reality, it simply was a reaffirmation of a fundamental tenet of our educational system in Illinois, that public education is supposed to be free for all. In the past, I have spoken about the inequitable nature of these fees and how the more fair way to pay for education is through our taxes. And make no mistake, this fee is about paying for education. What else are instructional materials if not a central ingredient to a child's education? But tonight, I'd like for you to consider another reason to vote against the instructional materials fees. Article 10, Section 1 of the Illinois Constitution says the following in no uncertain terms. The state shall provide for an efficient system of high-quality public educational institutions and services. Education in public schools through the secondary level shall be free. Our Constitution is clear. Education shall be free. The charging of fees for instructional materials, which is a central ingredient of a public school education, is the antithesis of this constitutional mandate. Other states also have a free education clause in their state constitution, and court decisions from those states are interesting. For example, Article 11, Section 1 of Montana's Constitution states that it shall be the duty of the Legislative Assembly of Montana to establish and maintain a general, uniform, and thorough system of public, free, common schools. In Granger versus Cascade County School District Number 1, the Montana Supreme Court held that fees for courses or activities of a public education cannot be levied, and to force parents to apply for a waiver is a degrading experience. California's Constitution at Article 9, Section 5 requires its legislature to provide for a system of common schools by which a free school shall be kept up and supported in each district. And in Hartzell versus Connell, the California Supreme Court held that the imposition of school fees violated the free education clause of its Constitution. Illinois courts have not had the occasion to review the imposition of instructional materials fees, but there is some legal support to find that the Illinois Constitution may be a source under which the board can eliminate the fees. Eliminating these fees appears to be consistent with the public policy of the state as announced in the free education clause of our Constitution. I urge you to vote no on the imposition of fees for instructional materials and to reaffirm the principle that public education is to be paid by all of its citizens through public taxes. Thank you, Sunil Bawe. All right, the next one is from Debbie Diate. I'm not sure I pronounced her last name correctly. Forgive me if it is incorrect. Good evening, Board of Ed. I am writing to you today as a teacher that started with students back in the classroom in early October, as well as a mom of 2 primary students at Brentwood and a daughter to caregivers of my children, to urge you to keep District 59 schools remote until positivity rate and COVID cases come down. I returned to my classroom, took all the precautions, followed all the guidelines and rules, and I brought home COVID to my family the first week my kids returned from school. A student came to school and exposed my entire cohort to COVID. We were never notified and found out when my family was exposed to COVID. Not only did I bring it home to my family, my students' families were affected by this too. One boy saw his 92-year-old grandma that passed away because she caught it. 3 students feared they did the same and could not stop crying while I was teaching, and they were supposed to be learning ELA. One boy infected his entire family. 3 of his brothers are in other schools within our district, as well as his twin baby sisters and parents. His dad is in the hospital fighting not to be a death statistic right now. The community brought it in our schools and it was passed in our schools. Our community is at almost 14%, 7 days, and 11%, 14 days. In our school system, we have run out of subs. Administrators are subbing in classrooms as well as in-house substituting, which is causing cross-contamination. There is no consistency or stability in the school system right now. My cohort was there for 3 days and then we were quarantined for 14 days. We went back today and our school shut down due to lack of staff out on quarantine. 5 middle school teams, half our building, and will not be back until next week. There's no consistency for the students. It gives them a mixed message. District 59 has done it right since the very beginning, kept kids remote. Please continue to do that as you look at numbers and measures and go to the data and science behind it. Please continue to put the students, teachers, and community first. Keep students remote through at least semesters 2, and even further if we need to when we reevaluate the data. It's the safest and most consistent thing for all. Signed, Debbie Diate. Okay. The next one is from Michelle Notini. To the Board of Education, my comments relate to the proposed 2020 tax levy and District 59 finances in general. According to your presentation, the proposed levy is 4.4% higher than the previous year's tax extension. Also, the latest published financial documents on the district website, including the 6/30/19 audit report and budgets for the years ended June 30th, 2020 and 2021 each reflect a budget surplus. My question for the board is, can the public expect to hear a discussion of how such surplus funds may be used to support families during this global pandemic, especially those struggling with the cost of childcare or challenges of remote learning? Will you consider waiving school fees next year in consideration of the economic struggles most families are experiencing? Thank you for all you are doing to support our schools during these unprecedented times. Okay, this one is from Jody Briggs Dre and Steve Dre. We're writing you today, dear Board of Education, we're writing you today as you discuss the instructional materials fees for the 2021-22 school year, and hope you will consider some of the points we'd like to address. I recall being in the audience at a past board meeting and this topic came up. I was so hopeful that it might get voted down because when we think about the socioeconomic makeup of our district, it might be very difficult for families to be able to pay this fee. We are in a fortunate situation as we are both currently employed during this pandemic, but many in our district are not and are struggling. In our district, we are known for being forward-thinking in so many ways. Full-day kindergarten, a state-of-the-art preschool building and programs, social workers and psychologists at each building, a strong focus on SEL, even pre-pandemic, and so much more. We stand out from surrounding districts in these ways. We should continue to stand out from surrounding districts by not charging our families instructional fees. I was fortunate enough to serve on the strategic planning committee, and I heard a lot about equity. This is what the community wants, and the district should work towards this goal. We'd also like for you to discuss what happens when families do not pay their instructional fees. Are there consequences? If so, are they punitive? Impacting whom? The parents, the students? This is something that should be strongly considered prior to making a decision about fees. We understand there was a waiver process. What is the data on that? How many families asked for the waiver? If the number is low, why might that be? What is the income threshold for being able to request a waiver? Might some have pride when it comes to filling out a waiver? Might some families deal with illiteracy? Some forms can be very complex to fill out and therefore very intimidating. Public education is supposed to be funded by taxpayers and available to all. That is equitable. We would be more than willing to sacrifice something else and pay a little bit more if we knew it would mean that those who are truly struggling, especially during this pandemic, both financially and emotionally, could access and education for their children that is truly free. We ask that you give this topic the time and discussion it deserves this evening. With sincere gratitude, Jody and Steve, Juliet Lowe, parents of 3. Okay, we're up to the last one and it's short. This one's from Karen Davidson. I wasn't going to submit a comment, but just want to say, I hope the board continues to prioritize the safety of everyone, including the teachers. Cases are rising higher than we've even saw in March and April, and now it does not seem like the time we go back to in-person school. Please make the hard decision and stay remote till January and then reassess. Okay, so that is the reports, the comments for this evening. And now we are going to go to, that keeps moving around. I don't know what we're going to there.
Public hearing.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go to the public hearing. And we need to open the public hearing. So do we have a motion?
Smardell, I move to open the discussion for the public hearing on the levy.
Okay, and the time is whatever the time is.
8:10.
Okay, thank you. And so do we have a second? I'll second it.
Okay. Janice, you?
Yes.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
Okay. Karlovic,
Aye.
Lang,
Aye.
Mancia,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
and Krinsky.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. So we now have a presentation.
Janice, were there any comments other than the couple that you read related to the levy?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Fessler. Thank you, Board of Education. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about the 2020 tax levy. First of all, though, I'd like to say that this is an exercise that the state does require every year, except that District 59 goes above and beyond in order to do a public hearing, even though it never goes, or typically does not go above the 5% threshold. So here is the final information from last year. These variables do assist to build the 2020 extension. As you can see, excluding bond and interest, the extension was approximately $86 million. The Cook County equalizer was at 2.91%, and the CPI for last year was at 1.9. The major emphasis on this slide is that the levy is strictly the request. It's what is asked for. We do our due diligence in order to predict what should be requested. An extension is the actual, what is actually received. The equalized assessed value is the real estate value in the state. This is not immediately known. And with these variables, the county clerk is the one who creates the tax rate for the community. So this EAV and tax rates slide shows that the extension and the dollar amount that's received is always going to be the same. The county determines that dollar amount, but here's the formula. The EAV increase means that the tax rates can decrease. The EAV decrease means that rates can go up. So it's always a good thing, for example, to have more industry or commercial so that it can relieve the taxpayers in residential areas. If you look at our historical EAVs and tax rates, this shows the example of the inverse relationship between EAV with it. So for comparison's sake, here is a list of all the districts feeding into District 214, which is our high school district. We continue having the lowest tax rate in the area. So if you can see, with us being 2.75%, 2.75 is our tax rate, and then it goes anywhere up to 4.69 from Wheeling. If you break it down by bond and interest as well, it's negligible, but the district does take pride in ensuring that we are fiscally responsible with what we're doing.
Just to note, Palatine does not feed 214, they feed 211, but we do have contiguous borders with Palatine.
Oh, I apologize.
You're new, that's okay, Ron.
As for tax increment financing, when I went back and I discussed the idea of commercial and industrial being an important aspect of our tax rates, TIFs can restrict a district's EAV. And I would like the public to understand that District 59 has several TIFs that do affect the district's value. For example, if you look at the Elk Grove, Bussey, Elmhurst one right there, when they first froze that EAV in the TIF, it was at $302 million that they froze it at. So after that, anything that's above it, the district does not see. As of last year's report, the EAV for the Bussey Elmhurst TIF was approximately $596 million. So that's about a $294 million property value that does not contribute to District 59. As a result, homeowners and others on the books make up that extension. It is not necessarily anything that District 59 does. It is only what happens when we have major TIFs in our books. And if you look at the residentials, actually over the last 5 years and what percentage they participate in our tax rates, it's anywhere from 37 to 39%. It didn't really fluctuate too much. So when we look at our CPI, over the years, it's been kind of like a crapshoot, if you will. And for 2020, for our year here, it is at 2.3%, but in years past, it's gone over from 1.9. 2016 is 0.7. I still remember back prior to 2010, there was a 0.1% situation at that time too. So here's the levy timeline. It's just like every year. Please note though, our levy is not above the 5%, but we continue to do that public hearing for transparency. So we are doing the resolution authorizing the preparation. We propose the levy. Today is the public hearing. December 14th, we talk about the levy and maybe adopted, and then we file by the last Tuesday in December with the county. When looking at the tax levy considerations, district levies more than an expected extension. Otherwise, the district loses those tax dollars forever, and the loss is compounded year over year. To make the process complex, there are several unknown variables which can change the extension, such as the EAV, new property, the Cook County multiplier, the levy, the EAV overall. There are issues that we do have to, like, it's a guessing game in respects, but we have to be educated about it. And we reach out to multiple avenues to ensure that we get the best information before we put this together. So here's the proposed tax levy summary based on last year's extension. If you can see that, again, the capped extension was $86 million. And the levy amount, which is the amount that we're not expecting to receive, it's just for us to cover our bases, is $90,355,930. Again, this is not something we are expecting. We're just expecting to make sure we ask for enough or else we lose it forever.
So you guys have heard the term ballooning the levy in the past. So for those of you who have not, these unknowns. We do not have this information, these calculations prior to the time where we have to file our levy. So therefore we balloon it by a certain percent, which Ron has explained, to make sure that we're capturing any dollars that are due to us. If we miss that and we underestimate it, like Ron explained, we lose those dollars forever, and it is a compounding number. So that's called ballooning the levy. And that in some cases districts balloon over 5%. You can balloon to whatever you want. You only get what is legally permissible. So the amount is set based on all those factors explained in this slide here.
That's correct. In the proposed 2020 levy summary, the estimating EV we're saying is a 2.61% change. We do have an expiring TIF, so that's an unknown as to what can happen with our property values. The CPI is at 2.3%. We estimate new construction at 50 million because we're not sure of the effect of the economy just yet from the prior year, as well as tax cap reductions. We will apply that to operation and maintenance so that we can ensure that we collect tax dollars for our students and use them in education.
Any questions for Ron?
I have a question, Ron.
Go ahead.
Oh, sure. Just so I understand it, I just want to make sure I get it here. So we're asking for 4.96% above last year's extension, right? And extension is the money that we actually received.
That is correct.
Right. And so this year's levy, I think it was at 90 million. Is that the amount of?
Yes.
If the extension comes in above that, does it come in above that? And if it does, do we give the money back? Do we keep it? Let's say the extension is 92 million and we're asking for 90.
Well then, yeah, Robert, unfortunately then we would miss out on that $2 million and we would never recover it ever again. Okay. And in fact, it would, just like we were saying earlier, it would compound so that we would never ever, not just that 2 million, but year over year over year.
But does it ever come in more than what we ask for in the levy?
If it does, we've not ballooned our levy correctly. So it's critical that we increase that percent so we can capture. So we look at historics, and as Ron mentioned, we reach out to municipalities. We talk with our construction folks and try to get an idea of what that number is. And then again, slightly increase that just to make sure that we capture all that is available. If we don't, then we can never recapture it. We don't get it. So to your example, if we ask for 90 and we get 92, we lose that 2 million this year, next year. So, in 10 million, that's 10 years,
Yeah.
that's a $20 million loss.
Okay.
Robert, when I was at District 300 as an intern, we balloon levied at 20% because we were so unsure of what the construction would look like or how big the size was of that district. So it was it was a common practice.
Sure. That makes sense.
Just
Any other-
I just wanted to comment on the TIFs. I'm definitely against TIFs because it's very, very detrimental to school districts. And I hope that we can always, if new TIFs are presented to us from any of our 4 communities, that we will go and try to work with the villages and try to make sure that none of the villages TIF us that much, because definitely it's something very difficult for us to get over what we're losing, because anything that's in the TIF, we do not get as a district.
Mardell, one thing about the TIFs is we don't really have a say in it. The villages can do what they want and they don't have to listen to us.
I understand that, Randy, but I want us to be able to go to
Mardell,
these,
can I finish, please?
at least go in and express ourselves and try.
Mardell, please let Randy finish his comment first. Thank you. Randy, go ahead.
So the latest TIF that Arlington Heights has proposed, which is Arlington Heights Road Corridor, which isn't actually on the map because it hasn't been really officially started. That is a mixed-use TIF. That mixed-use TIF will have residential apartments and retail in it. If we do get students from that residential area, we will get paid basically a tuition per student to cover our costs associated with educating those students that come from that TIF. But yes, you are correct. The TIFs do hurt us. It more hurts the community members because they absorb a larger percentage of the tax base when a TIF is implemented.
Exactly.
So it's not, we're not asking for any more money, and we're not getting any more money, but the shift of the burden shifts from that commercial area to the personal area, and that's the effect of TIFs on the community members.
Exactly, I agree. But they're definitely not helpful to us.
Well, at least not in the short term. It's possible that, as they develop more of a base, if they're successful, which they haven't always been, then that will come back to us eventually with improved tax base. But, we don't see it in a lot of cases. I want to thank you for this. You've given us some information that I hadn't seen before and hadn't had explained in the way that you did. And, I understand the concepts about it and why we do it and how it gets done, but I really appreciate all the background information that you brought in to help flesh out the surrounding information about the TIFs and the process.
I agree, and this is the first time that Ron has had to go through this with our district, and I'm very happy that he's given us such a good, understandable report for us to get through.
Yes, thank you. So, are there any other questions or comments at this point? I need to check and make sure that we haven't received any comments since it is a hearing. No. One came in too late though from the League of Women Voters. I'll forward that. It's not about the TIF. There isn't anything about the TIF here, so we need a motion then to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing at 8:25 p.m.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. It's Courtney.
Okay, thank you. Roll call.
Hang on one sec. Courtney. Okay. Lang.
Aye.
Mancia.
Aye.
Latrelli, aye. Reed.
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Krinsky,
Aye.
Garlovich,
Aye.
and the motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you, Ron. Okay, now we are up to the 6.0. We already had the presentation from School Exec Connect. So now we are up to 6.02, the return to in-person learning update.
All right, thank you, Janice. Good evening, everyone. We'd like to provide an update today. Some of the information that we'll present is repeat information. We've tried to stay as consistent as we can in terms of what we're sharing and what we're asking. As you know, at our last board meeting or recently, we discussed the Illinois Department of Health and county school metrics as something that we look at very closely. This is just a quick refresher of their information. Again, they have 3 categories of risks for transmission. We'll talk in the upcoming slides specifically about transmission rates, concerns, and then other areas that we're looking at as we continue to bring conversations to the board for consideration. At the last board meeting, we talked about the board actually redirected in terms of returning to a visual that looked more aesthetically pleasing and was easier to follow. So Tom Ludloff recreated our slide. This should look familiar. We used something of this earlier. But basically, again, our history is that we've tried to get feedback and we've tried to talk to the various stakeholder groups. But in the end, we have always tried to do what we think is safe, and then based on some type of information, and it's not just one source, it's multiple sources. So at the last board meeting, the board asked us to add one additional piece of information, excuse me. Which was to add the student and staff percentage rates at the school. So we'll get into that a little bit, but that's what this middle data column is that my pointer is on. But basically, these are decision-making considerations. None of them are if-then statements. It's a collection of a number of different data points that we look at that are both internal and external in making our recommendations to the Board of Education or sending information for consideration. So as you can see with the current metrics, we would be closer to a step 1 if we just looked at the Illinois Department of Health recommendations. So we don't just look at that. We are looking at direction from the governor via the Restore Illinois plan. We're looking at the ISB and the IDPH guidance. We're looking at our local district in-person status. We have about 250 kids currently in our schools. We look at external considerations for other school districts that feed District 214, 211, and then also 220, just so we're looking at our surrounding school districts that we share contiguous borders with, and then also that attend District 214. We look at the implementation of our mitigation strategies, and staffing is really an important piece. Right now, we have a significant concerns for subs, and that if there is any particular outbreak in a building, staffing a solution of in-person would be quite difficult. And that's what many other surrounding school districts are reporting to us, that they're shutting down classrooms, they're shutting down schools. They've tried for a week or two and have had to make significant adjustments. And we'll talk about some of that in this update tonight as well. And then again, as I mentioned, we have approximately 250 students currently receiving some type of services for in-person. So again, this is a consideration of a number of different pieces of data that we look at prior to making any decision or recommendation to the Board of Education. Tom has been keeping a running record of the positivity and incident rates, and he'll walk through the most updated information. I know that board members are very familiar with this, but for public who may not be following this as closely, Tom, can you walk through how we look at this and how we use this information on a regular basis?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Fessler. So dating back to the September board meeting where we started to dig deeper into positivity rates, incident rates, at that time the board outlined, the need to collect this data to document it so we can follow it. We're utilizing the Northwestern site. That site really just takes Illinois Department of Health data and compiles it in a way that you can grab one zip code area. As you can see what we do, we look at each of the 5 zip codes that our schools are in, but it also allows us to combine those in and get an overall rate for the district. So this is the last 2 weeks of data collected, and we're utilizing, the colors are based on those IDPH risk factors. So we do look at this every day. The site is updated at about 4 o'clock on the mark, pretty much every day with the previous day's data. So as you look at things, today's data really is yesterday's data. So 11/9 is really for 11/8. And we look at that data, how it flows across those different zip codes, and then overall. One thing we've talked a lot about internally and recognize that really within those zip codes, there's pieces of them that our schools fall in. Mount Prospect and Elk Grove are where we have maybe a little higher percentage population, but the Des Plaines and Arlington Heights pieces, it's more of a smaller portion. So we recognize when Arlington Heights rate is 7.53, that's not District 59's rate. That's for the people who live in that zip code who have been designated positive in the testing process. So one thing, just as I'm building my understanding, the positivity rate, to make sure we're on the same page, that's the number of people tested. And then in the end, the number of people that were tested who come out positive. And what we've seen, actually, Mr. Reed located an article that came out on Friday updating that process, where IDPH is now looking at confirmed cases and also something defined as a probable case to help generate that positivity rate. We're not sure how that will impact things, but the main reason they spoke to that change is Illinois was one of many states that received a large number of new tests. There are these 15-minute antigen tests, antigen tests that even a school, if we had it, we could test locally and get a result. Because that's not a laboratory test, they won't call that a confirmed case, even if it comes out positive, but likely a probable case. So we may see some changes. I did do a little research and learned that CDC always recommends that probable and confirmed cases get included. Many states did not do that throughout the COVID crisis for whatever reasons. The comment from Illinois was at that time there was some disbelief, especially in the death rates, and they did not want to add to it by saying, well, we think this person died from COVID. It's a probable case, but went just with the confirmed pieces. So we did see an uptick. We've seen an uptick the last 7 days. Some of that over, the weekend could be related to this change, but we did make a note. We'll track it going forward and identify it in that way. But this has really helped us understand the status in our communities. And then we can look at other local districts and what's going on in their communities also through this process. The next slide, this relates to that internal piece that we started tracking. Fortunately, the group led by Dr. Ossel, our Health, Wellness, and Safety group, has been tracking internal cases throughout our return to school dating back to August. And we are, in a sense, creating our own internal positivity rates by the week, just like the IDPH does through that other process. So looking at how many positive cases and then about how many people are in schools. So the first few months, it was just staff. And these are pretty solid. I'm very comfortable with these estimates. I know they can change from day to day, but we do have some staff working from home. But as we, about 780 are here on a very consistent basis. And as Dr. Fessler mentioned, about 250 kids have been very consistently in our buildings over the course of that week. It might be 10 on one day and then those 10 plus another 5, but we're really trying to just get an idea of what that rate looks like. You know, our staff, families, and kids have done well. Our positivity rate on a week-to-week basis has been and is pretty low across the board, especially on the student side. What I added at the very bottom, that overall infection rate, what I wanted to just show was, well, this is the number. So if there are 3 positive cases from kids and about 250 have been coming, that's a 1.2% positivity rate. I'm sorry, infection rate. I'm trying to stay away from that positivity rate piece. That's a different thing to think about. For the staff, it's about 2.67% and overall about 2.31. The state of Illinois has had almost 500,000 positive cases as they've tested over since March and everything started. But Illinois has 12.6 million people. So the infection rate in Illinois is about 4%. So that's the way I was looking at that piece. And that total will accumulate as we continue to add cases over time. But it's another thing to understand how many internal positives we have and just another way to look at the data. I think Dr. Assel and Mr. Vittori, I think are going to jump into this slide.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Katie and I will take turns sharing some of this different information. Good evening, everyone. I was observing a board meeting in another school district the other day, and I heard a piece that I thought was just a terrific reminder of what this slide really represents. We in education have been saying there's a staffing barrier in reopening schools. And really the best way for us to say that is there's a COVID barrier and it impacts staffing. And so I just wanted to, I know this group is very, very aware, but for anyone who's listening in, our staff has really provided a number of celebrations in their efforts to get to work. They're going beyond expectations or recommendations they're being given in terms of when they could, get to work. And they want to be back. They want to be with their kids. In a lot of ways, it's much easier for them to do their job here at school. So I did want to share that as we're going through this data. Now, this data is from Friday, November 6th. It's already outdated. We received some emails over the weekend that neighboring districts, some have closed, and that impacts our staff who have children in those districts. And it just creates a rippling domino effect amongst everyone in our area, whether that's schools or businesses or our homes. But let me just go through just some of the information so you can have an understanding again of what the COVID impact on staffing is. ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, that's a legal accommodation for individuals who have health concerns. We have 58 individuals that are currently working remotely because of doctor documented recommendations. FERCA is the Family First Coronavirus Act, which provides relief in a number of different ways. One way is if you become positive with coronavirus and you cannot work from home because you're either too ill or your job doesn't allow you that because of the type of job, there is this benefit. If you have to be home to quarantine with a child of yours who's sick, the same kind of thing. And then there's also a piece where if you're unable to have childcare, whether your school or your daycare closed and you can't report to work, this is a federal accommodation. Now, the first part of that federal accommodation for childcare asks, can you do your job task at home? And we're very fortunate in the education space. Most of the employees that are parents who are having to take advantage of this are in a position like teaching where they can work remotely from home. But you can see that we have had Very few staff that have been completely out for either 7 days or a couple months. And that first column of a leave for child is they're out and they can't work remotely. We have had 18, and again, this data is a bit outdated since last Friday, staff that have been out ill because of coronavirus, somewhere between the range of those days, depending on the person. We have 55 individuals who are remote intermittently. So these are staff who are saying, listen, I don't need to work remotely all the time. You know, my partner can be home on Tuesdays. I need Monday, or I need to be here on Thursday, Friday. And I'm just blown away at how often staff are cycling back to us to say, the schedule's changed. I can come in now on Fridays. So that's been great, but that's a big number. And we have 95 employees right now that are fully remote because of this federal accommodation and the inability for them to find childcare. And there's another impact, of course, and that relates to our current COVID data. I will turn that over to Dr. Ossel to speak specifically about that. And then I'll talk a little bit about how we cover all of these things.
Thank you. From all of our buildings in District 59, we are consistently tracking our positive or probable cases for students, and those are our students who are in person receiving instruction, our positive and probable cases for staff who are working in our buildings, our quarantines for students, and our quarantines for staff. So I'll go through each. So for our students who have been present in our building since the beginning of this school year, we have had 3 confirmed cases. Of our staff who have been working in our buildings since the beginning of this school year, we have had 21 confirmed positive cases. Now for our quarantines, we are tracking quarantines due to close contact. That means that it is a student or a staff member who has come in contact with someone else who is confirmed to have COVID-19 or is probable to have COVID-19. And so for our students, we have had 20 students who have needed to be home for that 14-day period while they quarantine because they've come in close contact with someone. We've had 66 staff members this year who have needed to quarantine for a 14-day period and sometimes longer, which I'll talk about in a moment, due to being in close contact with someone who is confirmed or probable to have COVID-19. So that does have a significant impact on staffing when we need to make sure that we can maintain that mitigation strategy of contact tracing and quarantining as a preventative measure. But that obviously has a significant impact on our schooling and our staffing. So this data is captured in a dashboard, which will launch and be live following our meeting. On the dashboard, we've tried to design this in a way that would be friendly to our community and our parents. And so it looks like it is still loading, but in a moment you'll see in the top left quadrant, we have our district totals to date, and this is updated as of Friday, the 6th. So you'll see those same numbers that I just spoke to, our student cases, staff cases, student quarantines, and staff quarantines. There's also one more piece of information there, and that's cases transmitted within our buildings. So far this year, we have not confirmed that any cases have been transmitted within our buildings. And the way we look at that is by looking at epidemiologically linked cases. So we're looking at, has the person come in contact with someone else who has COVID-19 or is probable for COVID-19? And has it been transmitted by usual modes of transmission for COVID-19? So luckily we have nurses in all of our buildings, and they are well trained in these things and looking at contact tracing and making sure they're working through all of our cases on a case-by-case basis to determine if transmission was possible in the school, and then helping administrators to take appropriate measures. This COVID-19 dashboard also has a week-by-week total, so you can look at where we are for the current week and go backwards to the beginning of this year, and you can look by school, and at the bottom of the dashboard you'll see district totals. This will also live within a COVID-19 monitoring webpage that will be live on our website, which will have more information about what these things mean, definitions, and some commonly asked questions for our parents. So I want to take a moment and just make sure that we also understand the impact of isolation and quarantine and the definitions of each. We've spent some time with staff recently talking about these things because it is something that can be very confusing. When we talk about someone being ill and having COVID-19 symptoms, that person is in isolation. And that isolation period is 10 days because it's 10 days in which they could be infectious. It's possible for them to infect others. Now, after the 10-day infectious period is when a quarantine would start for the parent of that child. So often we think quarantine, if someone is ill, we may be home for 14 days, when in reality, we're home for the 10 days that is an infectious period, and then an additional 14 days for the quarantine period. Now, if there's an additional household member other than parent and child, and someone else were to then become ill, that process would start over again. And we would start with the 10-day infectious period again, and then the quarantine would begin for the rest of the household members. So that can be a very long period depending on how it spreads within a household, if it does, and how long that isolation period and quarantine period are. So those are significant considerations, and sometimes a surprise as we talk about starting with that 10-day infectious period and then really working through the 14-day incubation period.
That example that Katie just shared is one that I would say in the last couple of weeks, we're starting to actually see examples of that within the district, which makes sense in terms of the progress of this virus. And that has been incredibly challenging. I do want to speak one last piece, and that's that coverage considerations. But before I do, as a reminder, we do have subs in the district. Our subs are being utilized mostly for planned longer leaves. As you can imagine, staff members are still welcoming new babies into their family. They still have procedures or surgeries that come up or that they have to have. And to give you some context, we have about 550 certified staff and approximately 215 ESP staff. And that's not counting maintenance or custodians, but it gives you just a bit of an idea. So aside from that, we are also, of course, we're covering things internally. The memos of understanding that the association and the board have worked on together to free up people to cover both certified and ESP, that is happening on a daily basis in every building. We have had postings up. Unfortunately, like many districts, we are not seeing a lot of applicants for those temporary postings. We're getting some feedback as to why that is. We've also reached out to all of our retirees to see if we could at least use some of our retirees as virtual support as we were preparing to go into our hybrid. And we're not getting as much interest in that as we would have liked either. Some of that is, it's not just parents or children or teachers that may not be comfortable coming into a setting where you would have a lot of people, or even on a typical day, walking into a classroom to sub, it's not as challenging if it's a planned day because of professional development or a teacher has jury duty. But when it's a last minute, someone's sick and you have to come in, usually there's a team scrambling and trying to get everything they can in place for kids. So the extent of that, I think, is turning some people off. But we do first look to reassign staff. We are utilizing subs. We will combine classes. We were expecting to be able to do that in the hybrid internally. So if we had a class with 5 students in person and 3 students in person and a teacher called in because they were sick, we could safely combine. We want to relocate throughout the building. We have even talked about combining classes externally virtually for our singleton classes, so for some of our special programming to maximize having students with the best, most qualified people. And the very absolute last thing we want to do is move a class to remote. I didn't number these items because this isn't a directed list. Every building has different options in terms of who's in, who's out, what their availability is, but it is a guide. And I wanted to share this with the board so that there's an understanding that there is great thought going into how we keep things running and how we cover classrooms to try to avoid sending to asynchronous or to remote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. As I shared with the board, I meet with a group of superintendents weekly to talk about status, talk about strategies. Today I met with the following school districts here. Tom has been compiling tables and information related to updated status. So Tom, could you walk through these next 3 slides?
Yes, absolutely. So as Dr. Fessler mentioned, you know, the local SUPs are connecting on a very regular basis and providing updates for each other, you know, and the community as a whole. So this basically is all our local surrounding districts and then a few additional, including high school districts, and it's their status as of really today. So as you work through North NCYAA is the North Cook Young Adult Academy. That's part of the North Cook Service Center, Intermediate Service Center. It's currently there in adaptive pause. So basically full remote learning for the next 14 days. NSSEO actually in a number of schools our districts have done this, have put 2 schools into adaptive pause starting today. So again, that'll be for at least 14 days. And that's based on, in a lot of cases, the internal positivity rate, and in some, at least hearing from some superintendents, based on being able to staff their schools based on quarantine and positives and things like that. Palatine is continuing with their hybrid. Wheeling right now is continuing with their hybrid. Prospect Heights started adaptive pause today for the whole district. They are still bringing in some groups of students, at-risk students. I believe they're pre-K, special ed, and kindergarten. Arlington Heights is continuing with a hybrid model. River Trails started an adaptive pause today. Schaumburg 54 started adaptive pause today. Full district, full remote learning. Here moving forward, it's not necessarily defined. Some, I believe 26 said up to Thanksgiving. I do not believe Schaumburg defined when that would potentially go back to in-person. Mount Prospect, District 57, they've postponed their decision until at least November 30th. So they're staying in hybrid right now, or I'm sorry, in full remote learning. Des Plaines is still in the continuing District 62 of the hybrid model. East Maine is on Thursday, I believe it is, or Wednesday, sorry, is starting adaptive pause. Park Ridge is in a hybrid model, and then District 214 is a hybrid model, 211's in a hybrid model, and Barrington's right now on adaptive pause until the 16th. So from our last discussion, a number of these districts were fully open. They've now changed that, their status based on internal numbers, external numbers, and staffing. And then basically, these 2 are those really core kind of collar districts around us. We've shared this information a lot, and I've just used the colors to highlight where their metrics are at. So as we've heard, there are a number of districts that are open and they're outside the metrics they had defined, or their metrics are in the substantial. And these districts are either not open outside of 62 or have decided to move to full remote.
We've also noticed that some districts have still chosen not to publish a metric. And again, they continue to watch a variety of different data points, both internal and external, without publishing them and then sharing the why they would close or return to a remote when they make those decisions. So Schaumburg is one of those, and there are a few others. Some of the main township schools have also been very deliberate about not saying these are the metric that we utilize, because again, as things ebb and flow, there has to be some flexibility based on both internal and external factors in making these decisions. So next steps, we'd like to have a board discussion and direction. Following that, we'll continue on with any planning and preparation. Some of those would be to ask the board if they want to review any of the decision considerations or metrics. We would need to finalize a staffing plan in terms of any type of remote learning. As Ross had shared, the data for us has changed even in the last day, as other school districts will go to a remote learning. That impacts our staff and what they may need to do in terms of ADA accommodations. And then lastly, we'll look at developing a parent communication and instructions that will go out this week as part of a board update and or as part of a Friday family update with any necessary details. So if we decide to do something for the 16th in terms of a remote or in person, we'll want to get that information out to our parents sooner rather than later so everyone can plan, as well as to our staff. So, you know, the one thing that we know for certain is that we have a solution now with our remote learning that's viable. Our concern about returning to or rolling into the hybrid is a sustainable and viable option that could ebb and flow and change very quickly and without much notice, as we've seen the metrics continue to significantly increase in terms of the positivity rates. That remains concerning to us in terms of being able to staff any type of hybrid plan or in-person plan where we're bringing in a number of students. Now, I will say that as we look at the number of parents who have registered, we do believe that our class sizes would range from 4 to 7 to 8, depending on if the school and the parent interest. And then we think they'll be a little larger at the at the middle school, because our class size usually is about 7 to 8% higher at the middle school than at our elementary building. So with that, we'd like to open it up to board questions and discussions, and then get a recommendation for our next steps in terms of November 16th, considering a hybrid option or maintaining remote, or any other suggestions that the board may want to bring for discussion.
I have a question. Dr. Ossel, with the data as far as the confirmed cases of the students, we had 251 students, 3 confirmed cases. Do we have any data as far as students of our district that are not in the buildings who have tested positive?
We are not keeping the data of students who are not in session at this time. So, you know, we are required to report to CCDPH and IDPH those within our buildings that are positive, and we've let that guide the process.
Okay.
And this is Courtney. I have a question. If we could just get a refresh on the current status of those 250 students who are coming into school. I understand those are students with IEPs and special needs, but could you give us just a snapshot of the population groups who have been coming into the schools currently?
Yes, Courtney, with our students with IEPs, we took a case-by-case look at each and every student and looked at progress, how they were doing based on their IEP goals and the progress that they were making, and then talked through those decisions in terms of who needed to come in for how long, and focused on what IEP goals during that instructional time. So that truly is an approach much like everything within special education, where we really looked at each student and their needs and made determinations from that. So it's not necessarily certain programming or certain grade levels. It's truly each student with IEPs and what their unique needs were.
Thanks. And I guess a follow-up question to that, Katie, is, you know, we've heard these comments from parents that in fact some students are having particular struggles, like when it comes to the e-learning. And I guess I'm wondering if there is any opportunity beyond kind of corresponding directly with the teacher to brainstorm and problem solve about how students who may have like particular acute struggles with e-learning, if there's any other options they should be considering.
Specifically for students with IEPs, I would encourage parents to reach out to the case manager and IEP team for those discussions so they can come together and problem solve.
Thanks. I guess just to give my comment on things, I want to make sure, of course, other board members get their questions answered. But I think at this point, my concern is we were planning to go back on the 5th, and we're not comfortable opening at that point because the positivity rates exceeded the metrics that had been determined by our community group, which was at the time sort of bordering on and exceeding 8%. We're now at a positivity rate that exceeds 14%, which is almost twice the substantial risk category. And that on top of that, when we look at one of our secondary criteria, the number of cases per 100,000, that has blown up as well, like well into the substantial risk category. And so I think at this point, my inclination would be that we do an adaptive pause. I would hope that as we get through the holidays and perhaps into January, that we would see that positivity rate number potentially drop below 10% and have better assurance that it's safe to bring our students and families in. But I just have significant concerns per the CDC guidelines and IDPH with going to a hybrid model when the positivity rate exceeds 14%.
I have a question, and I also want to make a comment, but I'll ask my question first. Of the staff members, we've had 21 staff positive cases over the last 19 days or 90 days. 14 of those cases have happened in the last 30 days. Have there been any spread among staff? Are these 14 individual cases, or have there been connected cases amongst them?
Robert, we haven't found any epidemiologically linked cases within our schools so far. So, you know, our nurses are looking at very specific criteria for could that have originated from within the building or not? And as of right now, we don't have any that we know have originated from within the building. Does that answer your question?
That does. And to make my comment here, you know, a lot of the comments are, when are we going to reopen the schools and what are we doing to reopen the schools? And last meeting we discussed and we voted to reopen the schools. And, you know, when I think of all this, and I'm thinking of what are our parents thinking? Our parents need to have the information so they know what to expect. And I don't want to be in a situation, I'll use the example of Charlie Brown and Lucy, where we keep moving the football and Charlie Brown keeps falling because we keep changing and moving the goalpost back. You know, if it's negative 30 degrees or colder, we know school's going to close. Why? Because it's on our website, because, you know, it's easy to understand and it's there. You know, we had these metrics in place as to how we can reopen safely. 6.4% to 7.9% positivity. The number of confirmed cases for every 100,000 students. And like we said, it's not a hard and fast rule that, you know, if this happens, we open, if this happens, we close. But we need to look at this in the bigger picture of things. 14% or so positivity rate in our district. Cases of 518 incidents over, you know, when we said the limit was 100, you know. We need to look at this. Yes, our students need to be back in school. I completely get it. I am trying my hardest to get there. But we need to look at it also as, how does this impact the nurses in our buildings, the custodians, the staff, the families? You know, those 3 students that tested positive, did that impact their families? Did that impact other people? Did that spread? Those 21 teachers, did that spread? You know, it's a duty that we have to our students, but also to the community at large, to those neighbors of our students that may not have students in our district, but the actions that we take could impact them as well. You know, so I agree with Courtney. We said we were going to open up the 6th. The metrics, we can't hit those right now. The community, all of us need to take a role in that and getting these metrics down, and social distancing, wearing a mask, the whole works. You know, and if we do an adaptive pause for 2 weeks, maybe the numbers go down. You know, we don't know. We can't look into the future, but I think we should have these rules, have these thresholds that are easy to understand, that our parents and our families know what to expect. When they see the numbers rising, they can coordinate and plan, knowing that either schools are going to reopen, schools are going to close. But I think we can't meet every month and change the numbers every month and change the guidelines every month. I just can't support that.
Okay, I'm gonna put my 2 cents in here. One of my big concerns, besides the fact that we're being pounded by this pandemic, is the staffing. I mean, we're not the only district that is that's going through it, that's struggling with that issue, but staff doesn't just get COVID. Staff doesn't just get the flu. There's strep, there's other family emergencies and everything. And we were having a hard time getting subs for that. And then you're going to have to get subs even more so now with the situation that's going on. That's doing a disservice to our staff, to our families, if we can't put the people in the room to be able to take care of those kids and be able to teach those kids, because we have a shortage. So I'm going with Courtney and Robert on this one. I mean, I can't see that we can safely and efficiently return when there's just so many of those variables out there that we don't know.
Well, I have a question. When would we propose then going back to school, and if we are going to postpone? That's maybe where I'm standing at right now.
Well,
postpone this for, like as Robert said, we set our dates, we set our numbers, and we follow them. Or do we revisit it next week? Say, hey, would we? I mean, that's where I'm concerned. Is like, we set a date to go back to school. The week before we said, hey, we looked at the numbers. Hey, we can't come back to school. Now, a week later, we're talking about, okay, now what are we going to do? So that's where I'm coming from.
So we used the 14 days in the last, because we tried to align with what ISB is suggesting school districts do when they go to an adaptive pause. Now, we didn't go to adaptive pause, but we used that number, and I think that ties to quarantine time, and so forth. I think we should discuss this because considering that the holiday season is coming, we can certainly revisit this every 2 weeks, Randy, but I want to be fair to our families that I truly don't see the numbers, coming down to a rate that is outside of that substantial in the next 3 to 4 to 5 weeks, if even then. In talking to some of the other superintendents, although it's not been updated on the update that Tom shared, there are many that are considering going into adaptive pause in the upcoming days and then remaining there until mid-January, also forcing a quarantine after the holidays to make sure that if people have traveled and things of that nature, that they have time to either become well or manifest any symptoms or what have you prior to returning to our schools, so that we can all have a fresh start, that meaning both staff and our students. So I do think that's a great question, Randy. And I think realistically, I think it's going to be hard for us if we're looking at particularly the substantial transmission rate and the per 100,000 cases as primary data right now to return in that 2 to 3 week period. So, but we can certainly, and we have been trying to be very forthcoming in all of our communications to say that, we want to do diligence. We want to give this every consideration. However, please have your contingency plan in order in the event that the rates continue, because we've seen no decline or relatively maybe in a couple of zip codes, but then they quickly return and continue to increase. So I think that's a great question for discussion.
This is Janice. I really had been leaning towards saying let's reopen, because the transmission rates really are low in schools. They are happening, but there aren't that many of them. But my bigger concern is the chaos that we would be putting our students and teachers into if we're having to suddenly flip-flop and go back into remote, mostly because we won't have the staff. I know from talking to Dr. Hackett at SSEO that they spent hours over the weekend trying to figure out if they could open, but they didn't have enough staff to do it. And I know that other districts like 54 are struggling with that. And so my big issue isn't so much that it's not particularly safe, it's whether or not we can actually deliver on it. And so that's my biggest concern. And I know from conversations with Dr. Fessler that even though districts aren't publicly saying it yet, what he's just alluded to is that a lot of them are thinking they're not going to be able to stay open. And they are looking at going to remote. So so even if we were to open, I'm just worried that we wouldn't get to stay that way, that we would have so much illness and so many people in quarantine that we can't do it.
Janice, this is Courtney, and I'd like to pick up where you left off with that, because my other question is, if we took this, some of these pleas received in public comment and returned now and opened up, there was an article in the Tribune today about sort of the first analysis of data now that it started to be published about school outbreaks. 10 schools currently have outbreaks. 44 schools have experienced an outbreak. We heard the anecdotal example in public comments of someone who was affected by an outbreak firsthand. And my concern is all of this exposure during a time where we do have Thanksgiving, we do have Christmas. And I know that, at least being a parent of 2 kids in the district, my kids are on a schedule, they are learning. It may not be as optimal as being in the classroom, but if things proceed as they are going to continue to learn right up through winter break. And my concern is that we would actually lose even more valuable time of that direct education by starting to develop back to school procedures that are time consuming and then have the carpet, the rug pulled out from under us. And so I guess to Randy's point, my personal preference is to put ourselves on pause to mid-January, see what the statistics look like at that point. And I agree with Robert. It's like, if they meet these metrics that we are all monitoring, then we open according to our plan. If our metrics are not met in mid-January, we do the adaptive pause. So that's where I stand on it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be a mistake to just keep holding out this hope that magically these numbers are going to drop, and then every 2 weeks having to disappoint people. I just think it's chaotic. It's hard to get your head around. You don't understand what's going to happen. But so I'm also in favor of waiting until mid-January. I am so sorry to say, because I would love to see our schools open. So another question to Dr. Fessler and to perhaps Katie is, we know there are students out there who cannot get on to follow and be in school because they have no internet. Even though we've provided the ability to connect, the internet itself is not there. So do we have a plan to bring in those kids and maybe some other kids who are at risk for school failure? What is your current thinking on this?
So, yeah, thanks for asking that, Janice. And you and I have had this conversation before, and we truly thought we were going to be back in session last week. And I also want to reiterate that our staff want our kids back. Our administrators, they want our kids back in school. So please, I'm hoping that no one is thinking otherwise. This truly is about doing this safely. And, hearing comments like taking a risk or taking a chance, I mean, those are pretty big risks and chances. And again, we want to make sure that when we do reopen, that people are feeling, confident, and that we can staff it, and that truly the metrics, as the board members have indicated, support reopening safely. But all that said, Katie has actually pulled a team together, including the principals, and they're talking about expanding the definition of needy students. We talked about this in detail this morning as well. So Katie, can you share an update of some of the comments from the team and considerations that we're discussing? I know Ann Wang has been part of these conversations as well.
Absolutely. And we also have a plan to discuss more in depth tomorrow. Dependent on how the meeting was going tonight, we can do that as well. So we are looking specifically at a group of priority students, and making sure that they are able to connect and they have what they need. And that may look like a supervised remote learning within our buildings. If we were to do that, we would be able to really increase our mitigation strategies. This would be a very small number of students, a very small percentage of our student population at each building. And so we would have significant social distance, very strict measures and mitigation strategies in place. And we would start really with our protected groups. So we would look, first at those who can't connect and make sure that we can get them in person so that they could connect. And then we would start looking at other groups, primarily students who are experiencing homelessness. Then we would start looking tier by tier. So we would look at students who are experiencing a high level of need with both academics and attendance. And really, we would have to look at this very specifically in building by building to determine the space, the needs, and how many students that could be. We're really talking a very low percentage so that we can keep those mitigation strategies high. That may be 5% of a building's population that we're able to support in that way. But I think that would allow us to cover those who haven't been able to connect, who don't have adequate internet, despite all of our attempts and the supports we've tried to provide, it's just not available. And then starting to look at those other highest needs groups. Perhaps we would look at newcomers, and certainly this is all to be discussed and in continuation with our principals tomorrow and on an ongoing basis. But that's our beginning thought and how we would do this strategically and with some parameters in place so that there is consistency between buildings as to which students we're bringing in and operating with the highest needs first. Then we could also start looking at groups like early learning kindergarten as a priority, our English learners. So there are many groups to consider. And I think our role now will be thinking about, should we be paused until say mid-January, as you were discussing, then how do we relook at our students who have the highest level of need for perhaps a supervised remote learning opportunity or even in-person instruction should that be needed. That will also cause us to reconsider students with IEPs and the services they provide. So there's much discussion and planning around that, but those are initial thoughts.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking that we would be in step 2. We would not go back to step 1 should we decide not to go into hybrid. And that means that we would have small groups in, and I'd like to see that continue to happen. I am feeling a big sense of urgency. It is now November, and we have students who haven't been able to connect with their teachers. And these kids are probably some of the ones that need it the most. So I would really like to see us move ahead pretty rapidly, especially with kids that aren't connected, and then some of those other vulnerable groups, and get them into our schools pretty quickly. If that can be done, I know there's discussion, but I really would like to see us get started.
Well, that's planned for tomorrow. And I also think that we have our self-certification up and ready to go. We have our pieces planned, so it's something that could play out fairly quickly.
That would be wonderful. That would, and oh yeah, and the question that I had or comment was that since those students need access all day, we need to be able to feed them lunch.
And again, because this would be a very small number of students in a very controlled setting, I think that is something that we could do with our strategies in place.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you. So if we decide not to go to hybrid right now, and it sounds like a lot of people aren't in favor of that, I'd like to see that happen. And thank you for your work on that and the planning. I know there's a lot that goes into it. It's not a simple decision.
This is Mardell. I've kind of waited to listen to all of my other fellow board members, and I am very proud of our board because I think all of you do the very best you can, and all of your comments were very well thought out, and there is definitely a consensus. It bothers me when I hear the public say that the board isn't doing their job or that we don't care, because we do care and we are doing our job. And I think the administration is gone through many plans and have tried to do everything they possibly can. And I'm very excited about the fact that you're going to have this meeting, Katie, and bring more students in. I definitely think we should bring as many students in as we can before the hybrid plan begins, because there are some other people besides the special ed children who definitely need the extra time in school. So I'm all for that idea. And as far as the other hybrid plan with the Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up, I think we're all just going to have to sacrifice and wait until January, and then hope when we open in January that we won't have such a high positivity rate. I haven't even seen my own grandchildren until finally now from this whole year. This past week, I saw them for the first time because our family is not getting together, because everybody is wearing masks and trying to stay away from each other. And we're being very, very careful because nobody wants to have anybody in the hospital. So just from the sake of all of our safety, and because this is such a very bad time, and if you are in the hospital, you can't even have anybody with you in the hospital. Even if you're not a COVID case, you can't have any visitors. It's a very, very sad time in all of our lives. So I agree with everything that any of you have said, and I definitely would like to see more children back in school, whichever of the neediest people are. Katie, that's fine with me, whoever they are, but definitely. And then I think we should not dilly-dally around debating whether we should come this week or that week or whatever, as Brandy was saying, but let's just bite the bullet and say that we're going to wait until after Christmas and then make sure that everybody's in good shape before we start. And I know also we are not the only district who hasn't gone back. There are other big districts, very fine districts, who are in the same position we are. They have thinking about it. They're trying to get in, but they haven't started yet. So I don't think we should feel badly that we haven't.
Mardell, I would also like to add and just make sure that we're clear that when we talk about our priority students or target groups coming in within step 2, we are going to continue to monitor that. Of course, we would be looking for any internal positivity rates and make appropriate changes as we do. And that would also be highly dependent on staffing, which we know is challenging and a concern right now. So those are 2 factors that could easily influence the route of that process.
And you have to do whatever you have to do. All I'm saying is go ahead and keep working on it and try to get as many students back in as we can when it's safe and when you have the staffing.
You know, my only concern on selecting a date too far away, because even right now, Christmas is about 46 days away. You know, add another 10, 15 days on top of that, whenever that return date would be, is that things are very different month to month. You know, a month ago, 30 days ago, the positivity rate was, I'm looking at it here, 5.2, you know, much different, almost a third, you know, difference of what we're looking at today. You know, so that's my only hesitation with having a firm, you know, push out date versus, you know, the rolling 7, seeing when, you know, we fall within those metrics. If we do, that is great. You know, things are going down. That's not just great for our district, but great for everybody. But that's just my only hesitation with a January date.
2 comments on that. One is that I've read from more than one medical expert that, you know, they're epidemiologists or infectious disease specialists at different universities around the country that used to be with the CDC or what have you. They're saying that they don't think this is going to peak until January. So the people that follow this don't think we're going to see a big change. I think what I would suggest is that if for some reason we should say we're going to revisit whatever 2 weeks into January is, so that it's that quarantine period. So we'll actually know how many people managed to get themselves infected. But we are still looking at the numbers every single day. So if for some reason, by a miracle, it drops sufficiently, for whatever reason, we can always have an emergency meeting to discuss reopening, and we could do it at that time. So I don't think it means that if we don't, you know, that we'll never look at it again until the end of, you know, middle of January. So I think we should say, if we see a substantial drop, we will meet and we'll talk about opening at that point.
I agree with you, Janice. But that's a very optimistic approach, and I think we will definitely be looking at it every day. And if by some miracle it does go down, we can always have a meeting and plan for it. However, I can tell you that there's one district I know of who has already closed up for the whole year, and they've decided it will be virtual for the entire year because they are listening to some of the reports that say it's not going to end that soon, and they're taking it seriously.
If we just had a regular, schedule of the kids, if we didn't have holidays coming in there, I wouldn't be as concerned. But we've got kids that usually they go out of the country. We have families that they're gonna get together, whether you ask them to or not, they're gonna get together. So those are all catalysts to this extending. So it's like we've got Thanksgiving, and then okay, we wait 2 weeks to see what's going to happen. And then we got Christmas. And then it's like, if we wait till after these major holidays are over, those are things that we don't have to deal with then anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to my friends, people in the country that I'm friends with. I'm in a virtual book club, or neighbors. They're all getting together. I see them all the time. They're not wearing masks. They're inside. They're not distancing. And I know all these people who are traveling and they make up all these ideas in their head to justify their decision, but they're not doing anything that's safe. They're making claims that are not substantiated. And I agree with you, Patty. I think it's going to really go through the roof because people are still getting together.
Just to bring us back on the topic of discussion here, Dr. Fessler, what specifically can we provide here so we can move along?
I think I have direction. The direction that I've heard is that we'll stay in remote learning until at this point past the holidays. We will monitor the information regularly. If we see a downward trend, we can convene a special board meeting. I do think at the December meeting, we will have a really stronger idea of what the trend has been for the last several weeks, which will help us look at a date for January, if indeed the trends continue to remain the same or increase in terms of positivity rates. So I've got the direction that I need. I think the communications department, Justin, who's on here also, and the rest of the SLT has a clear understanding of what the majority of the board has just said.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm really sorry because I wish we could open. I understand the frustration. I understand that we're putting families in jeopardy. And I apologize to you all. I wish the world we were in was different than it is now, but that's not going to change it.
And Katie, I think kindergarten would be one of the groups that I would try to start getting in if possible. Because there seems to have been an awful lot of people who've talked about their kindergarten children needing to be in school. And quite frankly, they do need to be in school, but they need to be spread out a lot because kindergarten children don't quite understand that they can't be near each other. So that's going to be a problem to get them back in.
Well, I'm sure Katie will look at all the variables because we can't, we have to be really clear on who gets to be where.
Absolutely.
So it's a difficult decision. But, any kids that are really below grade level, I mean, there's ways to look at it to say these are our neediest kids and they really need this. So thank you, Katie, for taking on that difficult task. All right. Any other comments before we move on? All right. Now we are up to our first discussion item.
So discussion items, I know that there are a couple of these elements that were included in public comment. I would like to say that we bring these fees to the board every year. Obviously, we have an obligation to present these to the board for a decision. Typically, 701 and 703 have been things that we have approved on a regular basis. 02, which specifically was mentioned in public comment, the instruction materials, there have been years that we have not collected these fees. Typically, the history is that in times where the district was in need of additional funds, we, at least in my tenure in District 59, we included those funds and had those approved, but there were some years when we were in better shape financially where we did not. I would say that, as a result of some of the dollars that we haven't spent for transportation and other COVID-related unforeseen expenditures, this is a year that I would support, and administration would support taking a year off for the instructional materials fees. But again, that is up to the board, but wanted you to know the position. Ron and I talked about this today and feel comfortable for, even this year crediting for fees for future years or reimbursing in some cases. So from a financial standpoint, we could support, a board decision to waive instructional fees. Wanted people to be aware of that prior to the discussion. But prior to that, 701.
I like the idea of not charging.
Me too, but let's get to that one. Let's start with 701.
Ron?
Thank you. So as we can see for our 701, that is the typically developing preschool students program fee. Back in 2012-13, the district moved to offering the 4-day afternoon program to typically developing children. So right now, the 2021 school year rate charged to families with typically developing children attending the district preschool program is $238 per month. And as of right now, we were recommending a freeze, if anything. So
I'm in favor of freezing it there.
Yeah,
Me too.
me too.
Agreed.
Any other comments on that one? Okay, let's move on to the discussion of the K-8 instructional fees.
this was another one. Dr. Fesser really put it nicely. In years past, the district has decided that these fees were not necessary. So these are the instructional material fees. Effective with the 2012-13 school year, historical junior high school-based fine and practical arts fees were combined with the board established student fee. So to compare some of the data that I was asked to share, at this time last year, we received $109,447 in instructional fee dollars. At the same point in time this year, it's $74,607. So we aren't seeing as many families who are paying it at this time. 49% of our families who are waived, and there is no this necessary dollar amount when someone applies.
Considering that we haven't had a regular school situation, and considering how many families there are who are having trouble even keeping up with their work because of their children being home, perhaps we should just waive it for the remainder of the year.
Well, I think we ought to give them a refund then, because some people paid it and others have not.
Well, we'd have to make sure it was equitable, obviously.
Yeah, I would, I agree that we should waive them for this year. I don't see why we don't make it optional, perhaps, to get the refund. If parents want to contribute the money, I know at Juliet Low, we received a lot of instructional supplies, and maybe parents want to maintain contribution for that, but I'd like to see anyone who would like a refund potentially get a refund. Ron, I am interested, just for more clarity on, you said 49% were waived, and I guess I'm just wondering the numbers, because it works two ways, right? You have automatic waivers, and then you have a waiver application process. So are 49%, are you saying that's automatically waived, or is some subset of that people who applied for the waivers?
It's a combination of both.
It is. So what's the approximate number of families that apply for the waiver?
With that numbered, I can tell you it's minimal, because I do know that the student families that are direct certified and waived at this time are 3,200.
Okay, are 3,200, because I think, my concern was somewhat articulated by Mr. Bawe's public comment, where he referred to that Montana Supreme Court case that said that it's like a degrading process to have to apply for a waiver. And I just think about our principles of equity and wanting to make sure that all families receive that truly free education and don't have to go through a bunch of administrative hurdles and potential embarrassment or lack of understanding of English to get there. I think we do a lot to make ourselves accessible and hospitable, but again, I would support the fee waiver. And I guess I did have one other question with this. I'm sorry for the multiple questions, but it came up in public comment as well. And I'm just curious, like, what are the consequences in a regular year when we have approved fees? Are there any consequences for not paying the fees?
You know, I'm going to tell you right now, Courtney, we do not embarrass children. I know that was something that was kind of the way it was phrased. We don't do it on the kids. If it becomes a large amount over a certain dollar amount, it may be a collection agency, but that's kind of how it goes, and that's it.
Okay, no, I didn't mean to imply that we would in any way embarrass kids. I
No,
know
that wasn't you. No, I was talking about the public comment, not you.
Okay. So basically your point is that we would just continue to pursue those fees potentially through a collection agency. And is there any internal repercussion to not paying those fees in terms of?
There's not. So, you know, we've had discussions about this in the past, and I think to Ron's comment, in some systems, they may not allow kids to graduate or have some type of a punitive disciplinary piece. But again, we've committed to not doing that. We you know, try to keep that between the parents, the families. We try to be sensitive to the needs that each has. So we do handle it on an individual basis, but there have been times when, in some cases, this has been sent out to a collection agency.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question about being able to pay back those who have already paid. Wouldn't it just be easier to issue checks to everyone that's already paid it, rather than try to figure out whether or not they want to donate the money to the schools or whatever?
Can I chime in here? First of all, we're talking about two different things here. Right now, the discussion item 7.02 is for fees for 21-22. That is for next year.
Mhm.
That's what we're talking about right now. Are we talking about, so we're talking about, this is what the discussion item is. Now, if we want to talk about refunding fees and stuff like that, we need to make that a separate discussion item on a board agenda.
Well, it's already been a separate discussion item. We can discuss anything we want. We just can't take action if it's not listed.
Okay,
And
so
this-
now, but let's take this one step at a time.
Well,
now-
I think we are. I think we're discussing this year first, and then we'll go to 7.02.
Okay.
So what is the general feeling about this year and the people that have paid already?
Freeze refund.
This has just been such an exceptional year in so many ways that if we have to at least help people a little bit by giving them their money back and not charging the rest of the people this year, it probably would be a good idea. And then go ahead and get back to our regular schedule next year and hope that everybody's in school and we're in a regular way of life.
And Courtney, where are you with this? You're for waiver?
I am pro waiver for the agenda item as listed. In terms of the refund, I suppose issuing a refund directly, but articulating to parents, I would just want parents to have articulated to them the option to contribute, because I'm sure there are some who have paid them and would like to keep that money with the district.
And that's a good point, because let's face it, they do still have their children in school, and we have been giving many extra things to the children and the parents and the families whose children are being taught at home virtually. And we fixed hotspots, and we've been giving out so much stuff that we are spending an awful lot of extra money also this year.
But I think it's difficult to manage the process, which is why I was thinking, isn't it just easier to send it out? But I guess I would leave that up to Ron.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that's against a refund of some sort? Okay, so that looks like what we're going to do for this year. So with 7.02, let's move on. What's up there are the fee comparisons. And I think a lot of people already know what they want to do with this. I agree. I've always disliked these fees. And the only reason I voted for them in the last 2 years was because we were really financially strapped as a district, and that $109,000 was significant. It's a significant amount of money when you're really strapped. But now we're in a position where we have a surplus. So personally, I'd like to see it go. I would vote no on that.
And next year, as you're talking about now?
Yes.
No, I don't know about that. I think we have to get back to doing what all the other districts are doing, and they almost all charge fees because, let's face it, some of our people who are paying our taxes don't have children in school. So I think it's only fair for those who have somebody in school to pay, but I don't want to raise the amount. I think the amount should stay as it is and not be raised, and then just give back for this year because it's been such a special year.
I personally disagree that it should have anything to do with whether you have kids in school or not. I think it is a civic duty to support schools. And a lot of us had children in schools, and we benefited from others supporting our children. And I think it's a civic responsibility in a democratic society, and I'm all for supporting those children to have a free public education. So I don't care what other districts do. For me, it's my personal values.
I'm gonna agree with that, and with the comments that Courtney made earlier and that Sunil made in the public comments. I think, you know, if we're thinking $35, it may not seem like much. I think a lot of us spend that much on takeout, but there's going to be a parent that's going to have to apply and going to have to come into a building and look someone in the eye and say, I cannot afford $35. And it shouldn't be that way. The school should be free. And I think we should not charge that fee.
I'm going to say having a difficult year this year to begin with, these parents are going to be struggling to recover when things do start to, in some way, shape, or form, get back to normal. And I think if they have to, one last thing they have to worry about, I'd like it to be us. You know, the teachers are amazing. They try to make these kids feel as comfortable as possible, and these families as comfortable as possible, and the district does it as well. I mean, if we can go without collecting these fees, I'm all in on it.
Randy, or do you have anything you want to add, or Chris? We haven't heard from you guys.
I voted last time to eliminate fees, and I still will eliminate I will still vote to always eliminate fees. I will never approve fees for schools.
Sounds great.
If you're looking at $109,000 out of a $90 million budget, that is 0.1% of the budget. If we can't figure out a way to make fees, not even charge fees, and figure out a way to save $100,000, we shouldn't be a school district, in my opinion. We shouldn't have fees. I mean, 0.1% of our budget would be the fees that we collect.
Chris?
I have full faith in Ron's ability to find the $109,000 in the budget. There shouldn't be any fees to families with kids.
All right. Sounds great, you guys.
We can take it out of Patty's salary.
Oh, you know what? I will donate my salary.
I'll donate mine too.
We're all donating our salary every day.
Right. That's for sure. Okay. Thank you, guys. I feel hopeful about society with people who care about others. Okay. So we're up to 7.03. The discussion of the junior high school extracurricular participation fees.
Wasn't that this? Isn't I put that under the same thing? I don't know.
Is there?
I mean, what are they participating in? They know there's been no sports or anything that they would have
next year.
The next year, again,
for this year,
parents being able to come up with the money.
Yeah, but extracurricular is something that nobody has to pay because they want to do it. So it's a little bit different than the regular fees.
I agree with this is Randy. I agree with Mardell. I mean, the families that have waivers will still be given the waiver for the fees, but those families that, you know, can provide, I have no problem with the fees for the extracurricular activities.
This doesn't cover a waiver situation. We don't give waivers. Schools sometimes will do that, but it's not a formal process from what I understand, correct, Ron?
That's correct.
No,
Yeah,
because, I
so-
mean, when I used to have to get money for kids that couldn't afford like their gym shoes for cheer, I went to my building principal.
Right, so
Nope.
yeah,
No kids are denied though. So to Randy's point and Janice's point, both, we don't have a formal process for this, but no kids are denied if they
Right.
can't pay these fees. These only offset the significant costs associated with running these activities. So it doesn't cover the cost, it just offsets to some extent.
can we hold off on collecting these? I mean, this is for next year and hopefully we're open by then. But I think, you know, you obviously don't want to try to collect fees if you don't even have school.
Most of these are tryout sports, not all of them, but most. A couple of them are not. But we don't assess these fees until the season begins and teams are selected. So
Okay,
these would not be part of any optional fees that kids or families would pay in advance. This would be per
Okay.
each season when they begin.
Yeah.
if they begin. Okay, all right, I'm fine with that.
All right. You know what? You're right. I'm fine with that too.
Me too.
It's fine.
Anybody not fine with it? All right. So that'll come up for a vote at the next meeting. Now we're up to the consent agenda. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda. 801, approval of minutes. 8.02, disbursements resolution. 8.03, acceptance of financial reports. 8.04, acceptance of recommendations from human resources. 8.05, approval to destroy 18-month-old or older closed session meetings. 18.06, approval to release certain closed session minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Okay, let's see, where am I? Am I on Lang?
Aye.
Mencia?
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed?
Aye.
Schumacher?
Aye.
Prinsky?
Aye.
Karlovic?
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we're up to 9.0, the action items. 9.01, do we have a motion for approval of the award of bid for paper bid summary?
Hang on, where action items?
Make the motion.
All right,
All right, whereas bids were opened on September 25th, 2020 for paper, and whereas 6 bids were received with the lowest confirming bid submitted by Murnane for Zero Graphic and Midland for Vellum, if I'm pronouncing that right. Now,
Vellum.
therefore, what was that?
Vellum?
Oh, Vellum. Now, therefore, be it resolved on the 9th day of November 2020, the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 59 award Moraine Paper Company, 345 West Fincher Farm Road, Elmhurst, Illinois, 60126 for $59,423.50 for Zero Graphic Paper, and Midland Paper, 101 East Palatine Road, Wheeling, Illinois, 60090 for $9,671 for Vellum, for a grand total of $69,094.50.
okay, do we have a second?
All right, I'll second it.
All right then, roll call, please.
Okay. Let's see, we're at Mencia.
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed?
Abstain.
Oh, abstain. Oh, okay. Hang on. Schumacher?
Aye.
Prinsky?
Aye.
Karlovic?
Aye.
And Lang.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
All right, thank you. Now we need a motion for 9.02.
Make the motion as Courtney. Yet resolved that on the 9th day of November 2020, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education approves the attached amendment to agreement between First Student and Community Consolidated School District number 59 as presented.
Second it.
Who
Okay.
seconded?
Mardell.
Mardell. All right. Petrielli, aye. Reed?
Aye.
Schumacher?
Aye.
Prinsky?
Aye.
Karlovic?
Aye.
Lang?
Aye.
And Mencia.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
All right, thank you. Now we're up to Ross's favorite item on special interest topics, FOIA requests.
Since the last report to the Board of Education, there have been 2 FOIA requests. Both of them were followed through appropriately. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. 10.02, how interesting. Board appreciation and recognition.
Well, generally, we would, buy board members a cup of coffee or a lunch, which is a small token, but in the end, we want to express our appreciation to board members. This is Board Member Appreciation Month. Please know that we appreciate you every month, not just this month, and thank you for all of your time and energy and commitment to serving the students and parents in our community. So each one of you I know dedicates a significant amount of time. We give you guys a lot of homework throughout the course of the week, and appreciate your all of your time and dedication. There will be a significant increase in terms of your pay this year. Let's say 100%.
All right.
Double your salary. So thank you for all that. But in addition to that, board members are required to do training throughout the course of the school year. Some do much more than others based on their time, interest, and availability. And for those who do that are recognized. So Ms. Krinsky and Mrs. Schumacher are being recognized by the Illinois Association of School Boards, which is our state association, as master board members for completing a lot of professional training over the course of last year. So congratulations on that recognition, Mardell and Janice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think Mardell's been in that category for a long time. For me, it's my first one, partly because they've now automated all of it. And so I get the credit whether I file a piece of paper or not.
Yeah,
So,
I've been a master board member for quite a while,
right.
and I love what I do, and that's why I do it, and I don't mind giving the time because it's for children and it's for helping everybody. So
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Hey, I just want to clarify that Dr. Fessler's joking because 100% of 0 is still 0. Some people write in and they say, you're not earning your salary, or, what are you doing to earn your salary? We don't get paid. We're all volunteers, and we do it because we love kids. So even though you may not think that, we definitely do.
And I put in about 20 hours a week, and I'm sure some of you put in some similar amounts.
This is what I do. This is what I do to relax.
This is my full-time job. It's definitely a lot of work. Okay, let's keep going because we want to make it to the end without staying too late tonight. It's been a very full agenda. Now we're at 11.0. 11.01 is the IASB Resolutions Committee report, and I'm so proud and grateful to Patty that she was able to step up and take over this role. If you want to walk us through that, Patty, begin.
Mute me. Okay, so we have to decide if we want to support or oppose the new resolutions. And then we have 3 reaffirmations and then a new belief statement. So the first one has to do, how many are there? There's like 12 altogether. It's about loans. They don't adopt it. And it's a loan program that the board, public school dollars, the program will allow local dollars to flow more directly to students while providing relief to local taxpayers. Their idea is not to support it. It's up to us if we want to or not. I'm going to put your vote in on Saturday. So a loan program, did you guys get a chance to look these over per chance?
Yes, I read it completely.
Okay, so how do you feel about the loan program? Support or oppose?
I agree with all of the recommendations that came from the IASB.
Does anybody have anything against it?
If they said they support it, fine. If they said we shouldn't support it, I agree.
Yeah, because in this case, what they're really saying, each resolution that gets proposed by a district, and it says who submitted it. Sometimes it's a group of districts like item 2, and then the resolutions committee meets and goes through these and makes a recommendation. And in this case, they're saying recommends do not adopt. And their primary concern is the uncertainty about where the money would come from. So even if you were to support it, it's not gonna actually do anything. So,
Most of the time, the resolutions committee does a very good job of looking them over, and most of the time, their recommendations are accepted by most of the boards.
I mean, I don't see anything here that we would object to.
Hey, I'm for the gun control.
Yeah.
I
The
think,
gun-
I think we should be supporting that. I know that the ISB, they take the stance that, that we can only control what's inside the school district. But I think us as a committee, as a board of educators, of leaders of our children, have a right to say how we think this should be handled. And I agree that a law that keeping guns locked for when you have kids under 14 is great, but not when you have your 16-year-old, you don't have to keep your guns unlocked. I think that's a wrong message to send. Especially what's happening in environments.
I would agree with that one. I mean, we may not be able to control it, but we put our voice out there, what we think. And I like that. So
the local League of Women Voters also sent in a public comment, which came in too late for me to read it because it was just too late to get it in, but they are recommending also to approve this. And I agree with the comments about it, that I would vote to adopt it.
Okay, so thinking about the other.
Should we take a vote on each resolution?
No, we can't vote because we can't take an action item. We can just indicate support or not support.
But we have to all decide and make our
Right,
comments.
it has to be a majority.
How to vote for us.
Okay, so the first one on the loan, we said we're going to go with the loan program, against the loan program.
Against, right, do not adopt, right, correct.
Was support. The second was a report card, to move the date of the report card earlier so that we could do more with it. They say do not move the date of the school report card.
Report card's number 3, number 2 is a gun.
Right, we agreed to.
I already put for the gun.
We said adopt.
Yeah, so we adopted that, but we're not adopting this, moving the report card.
Well, Chris, how do you feel about that? I mean, we haven't heard from you.
About which point?
On the gun control. I mean, I think that's one that some of us have discussed, and some of us, I haven't heard anything negative about, but I've not heard your thought on the gun control. Basically, what it's saying is that
resolution, Patty, read the resolution.
For the gun control?
Yeah.
Well, I have it in front of me.
Okay, read it for us.
No, we don't have to read it.
I don't know that we need to read it.
Yeah.
Do you think we should voice our support for the resolution?
Well, the committee here recommends not to adopt it. We're suggesting to oppose their recommendation, correct?
Right.
Right.
Okay, so we're opposing their recommendation. Yes. So yeah.
We need to be correct here because we opened up the statement by saying we're going to go with what with all the recommendations in this report.
Right.
There are some recommendations.
Well, we really should look at them one at a time.
Right. So we're opposing the gun storage piece recommendation.
Right. Okay. So then the report card, are we talking about, they want to move it earlier? Or the recommendation is to move it earlier or leave it where it's at. So are we in support, or?
I am not.
You're in support?
No.
I'm not.
No.
Okay, so a
That's for it.
majority is not. Okay, so we're.
Wait, I'm confused, but you're saying you think we should not adopt it. So you're agreeing with the recommendation.
Correct.
Right,
Correct.
right. So we're not gonna, so we support their recommendation.
That would, in my opinion, that's a thumbs up. Then we're supporting the recommendation.
So guys,
Think about.
I think there's a way maybe to do this more simply. I'm just wondering, because me, I support their recommendation on everything except Randy jumped in before I could on gun storage safety. I do want to go against the committee's recommendation on gun storage safety, but otherwise I concur with the recommendation. So maybe we can structure this. Does anyone?
Okay, all right, Randy, I see your thumbs up. Okay, are we doing thumbs up on this?
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
so
no, I think if we're agreeing to not, if we're not going to adopt, we should do thumbs down. If we're going to adopt, we do thumbs up. We're not going to make a decision separate about whether we agree with them or not. Our decision is whether we are going to be for or against.
So Janice, I think that my point though was that if we are not going to follow the committee's recommendation, then let's raise those issues. Otherwise, the assumption will be that we go with the committee's recommendation. So when we put forward gun safety, storage safety as an exception, I think we unanimously agreed we won't go with the committee's recommendation and we will vote to adopt that one. Are there any others where we deviate from the committee's recommendation?
No, I don't.
No, I don't. I think the rest are fine.
Yeah,
so I go with, except for the gun control, the rest we're going with their recommendation.
The recommendation.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I want to just call out one of them because I think it's so important and it's so near and dear to my heart. And it's going to be something that we're going to be discussing next. And that is that they have added this wonderful new belief statement, and it's called equity. And so the Illinois Association of School Boards urges its member districts and the leadership of member districts to integrate the principles of equity and inclusion in school curriculum, policies, programs, and operations, ensuring every student is welcomed and supported in a respectful learning environment. The district rationale, the School Board Association, that's representing the state of Illinois, must have a part of its belief statements in unequivocal and uncompromising belief that equity must be a priority, and within each district, that must begin with the local Board of Education. The principles should be found in the entire educational spectrum, as the value of each student must be affirmed in all facets of their school experience. If our board leaders provide the example, then the probability is enhanced that the inherent dignity and equal rights of each student will be recognized. The Resolutions Committee rationale, the submitted resolution would add a new belief statement. It doesn't have one, they support it. So I want to say bravo to them, and I'm on board. So with what we've said, we're going with everything except the gun control one. And so Patty knows what to vote. Thank you very much, Patty, and the board for looking at all this. Now we're up to 11.02, equity and inclusion. And I wanted to add this because I think it's time to take another look at where we are in the process of getting to that place we want to be as embodied in the new belief statement, where we believe in equity and we believe in inclusion and social justice, and that it should be part and parcel of everything that we do. It should be in all our curriculum. It shouldn't be just an SEL thing that kids do once in a while, because it's really, really important, especially in a district as diverse as ours. So I am interested in finding out what you all think, but specifically for me, that we up our game in how we hire people to see, really pull out all the stops to try to get a more diverse population of staff and teachers so that kids can see people that look like them. I want to look at making sure that we are continuing on that journey of helping our staff understand what it looks like from an equity lens to be a minority, to be someone who's not part and parcel of the middle class experience, and the white middle class experience in particular. So I think it's really, really important. And then I'd like to see us make sure that we are using curricular materials that are really, really sensitive to the type of students and that we have, so that we're teaching things that kids can recognize. So cultural responsiveness is one way it's described. Anyway, I wanted to throw it out to you to see if you agree with what I have to say, if you have other comments about it. Where do we go as a district?
I'll chime in. Two points. We look at the presentation we had earlier with the superintendent search, and diversity was one of the top comments. Equity and inclusion was mentioned multiple times in the feedback results from the community, from the staff. With everything that's going on this year in regards to race relations and equity and inclusion, it in my mind, there's more than just releasing a statement. There's more that needs to be done, and it's leading by example. And in my own personal experience, if it's in college, law school, law firms, in the corporate world, it seems like once a year, there's always this one effort of doing a training on diversity and inclusion. You do your 30-minute training, you get a certificate, you print it out, and it's done. And nothing else is ever done on top of that. And you have to do more than that. So it's really asking these hard questions of, what can we do better? What are we not doing to the best of our abilities? And how does this impact a majority of the students that are in our district that are our, students of color? And what are they seeing? And how does that impact, their lives going forward? Because if we're educating the whole child and making them successful for life, they need to see that students that look like them have succeeded in life and have gone on to higher roles,
Right.
And are not just cleaning the buildings,
Right.
Right. So I'm all for it.
I'm going to say, I've been giving this a lot of thought, because having taught social studies for so many years, and looking at the textbooks that we get, and it's not just that we're picking one that has no inclusion in it. It's what the general choices that are out there. They don't add. I would always have to add supplemental lessons about like the Aztec Eagles, because it showed kids, look, we were part of this. We did something. We did great things. Or the Tuskegee Airmen, adding those things in. But I shouldn't have to do that. It should be in the book already, because we are a melting pot. All these different cultures should be included. Why aren't they? And so I know that there's other teachers besides me that would supplement with other lessons and things, but why should we have to, when it should be in the basic equipment that we get every day to teach these kids?
Right. And if we can't get it, we have to find ways.
We have to supplement. We have to find it. And there's wonderful things out there, but it should start with the basic materials. So I think the textbook companies need to step up their game too, but.
Absolutely.
Well, I'd like to tack onto that. Very well said, Patty. I mean, I think back on my own education, and when I was in 11th grade US history, my teacher chose to have the standard textbook and Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States as a secondary textbook. So we read both side by side. And it was really my first introduction to the fact that history always comes from a perspective, and often it's the perspective of whoever was victorious or dominant in the culture. So I would like to see us take further steps to build a culturally relevant curriculum. As Janice pointed out, I would like to see us focus on more diversity in our hiring. And I absolutely agree with Robert that you can't just do a training and kind of, one and done. But at the same time, I think that there's a difference that the world is waking up to between saying I'm not a racist person and how to actively be an anti-racist. And I would like to see us have some kind of comprehensive anti-racism training So those are just a few specific examples, but I really want to give a thank you tonight as well to teachers and staff, including, some of our social workers who have brought this issue to the board directly, saying, we think it's great. You've issued letters about equity, made statements about equity, acknowledged it in the strategic plan as a key goal, but where are the concrete steps of action that we're taking? And I appreciate the staff and teachers trying to hold the board accountable, because that is our job, to look and say, okay, are we just a mouthpiece for these things, or are we taking concrete action? So it is my personal desire as a board member to see specific concrete action in this area.
Well, and let me go back. First of all, I want to credit all the work that Dr. Fessler's done to get us to where we are, because we have staff, we have community outreach, we have a commitment to dual language, one way and two way. He hired Katie, and she was one of the best weapons that he could have found to take on this stance. And she did, and she expanded our outreach, and she strongly believes in the things that we're talking about. But we got sidetracked because of the urgency with the curriculum piece. So, rightly so, we focused on that. So I don't want to lose track of that. I think curriculum and where we're going with that is absolutely is critical, but I think they work well together. But I do think we have to find a way to move the district's thinking ahead. And I would like to ask Dr. Fessler and Dr. Ossel if they can come up with perhaps a proposal as well as a status report for the next board meeting.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that way.
Absolutely. I would also add to that COVID kind of interfered with this as well, because
yes,
we spent a significant amount of time during our strategic planning to make this a point of focus. So this is included in our strategic plan. Also in the human relations portion of our strategic plan, that was also many conversations that the large community group and district group discussed during strategic planning. So, I mean, I know it seems like strategic planning was years ago, but it was actually just last year that the board adopted the strategic plan, and those elements, are highlighted within that. But to your point now, the work has to be done. So we would, Katie would be happy to work with the departments to work out an internal audit, bring that back, and just share some of the great successes. We have had a department of student equity in place for 5 years now. We were one of the first school districts in the country to actually launch, to have coaches, but that also was competing with a lot of other changes in the district over the last 5 years. So we'd be happy to provide an update at the next board meeting.
Great, that's wonderful. I really am really excited and happy to provide that structure and focus from the board to the whole district to say this matters and we're going to do this work. And it's really a mandate to get it done. So I'm looking forward to finding out more about where we are and where you think we need to go. Did you want to add anything, Katie, besides being happy that we're doing this?
I am very happy that we're doing this. I'm just excited to advance the work that we're doing and move quickly on that.
That's wonderful. Okay, well, good on that. Any other comments about equity and inclusion? Okay, 11.03, the school board agenda calendar. I don't know that we usually have any comments. So let's move on to 12.0, reports of the Board of Education.
I just have one report which is related to the vestibules that we're changing in the 3 schools. And we are talking about changing the flooring that goes down the adjoining halls at Juliet Low because their floor is not in very good shape. I was assigned to go and look over at the floor at Claremont, and Claremont's floor is in very good shape, and it would be very difficult to just go out to a certain stop stopping point because the floor at Claremont goes completely around the entire building like a triangle, like a rectangle. So I don't think we have to worry about replacing flooring at Claremont, except what has to be done within the 2 areas where we are doing the work.
Okay. Thank you. Randy, do you have anything to add from that perspective? Usually reports to the Board of Education have more to do with, you know, some event we went to or something that we learned about. But since we haven't discussed the
Maybe we
fiscal,
could give a report from the Finance Committee. We were both at that.
yeah, do you want to do that?
No, we didn't really, I mean, we discussed some stuff. One thing we did talk about was fees and some other stuff in the levy, going over stuff. I think one thing that I'd like to see is the tax rates. You know, we have that bar graph of the tax rates. That does include bonds too. I kind of want to see that broken out between, you know, the actual levy and the actual bonds. Because I still think, even though, you know, we have some, you know, $35 million of bonds outstanding, I think that's still very low in comparison to districts around us. And I want to highlight that.
Sounds good. Can we have that in the weekly? And then maybe we can discuss it. Thank you, Ron. Any other comments, Randy, on the financials or the facilities?
Nope. I mean, the facilities are going along. On Wednesday is the opening for the bids for the vestibules. So we're hoping to see a lot of activity on that.
Good.
So hopefully we'll see some decent numbers and we can proceed with that and bring that to the committee next month for action items and approval.
I will try to be here on Wednesday for the opening of the bids.
This is kind of a new and continuing business and announcements. So I'm sorry, I'm backtracking a little, but the conversation just now made me think about the problems with crowding that we have at Brentwood. Now, obviously, we're not crowded because we don't have anybody in the school, but are we tracking that or considering, given that we have a surplus, that we might want to plan something? I know that, you know, we may end up having a smaller population next year for all we know. And maybe there won't be as much of a need for it, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we do have an overcrowding situation at Brentwood when we have been in session.
True.
So I guess I'll just ask if we can make sure we continue to have a discussion about what we might want to do as a district and a board.
I think what we'll do is we'll bring that up and I'll make sure that gets added to our next discussion at our next meeting in December related to the facilities committee.
Okay,
Cool.
Thank you. Sounds good. Any other reports of the Board of Education? Any reports of the superintendent's team?
No, the one report that I was going to share, we've already discussed, and that was the expansion of the definition of needy students. So there are no other reports.
Okay. Does anybody want to adjourn? Nobody?
Yeah,
So would someone make a motion to adjourn?
I will.
Okay. We need to have a roll call then.
Do we have to read the thing or anything?
I move
No.
to adjourn is all you have to say.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to adjourn. All right.
Not I want to, I
Read. Read.
Aye. Sorry, I didn't unmute.
You want to stay?
Yes, I do.
Schumacher.
You're going to be lonely.
Schumacher.
Yay, aye.
Prinsky.
Aye.
Garlevich.
Aye.
Lang.
Aye.
Mencia.
Aye.
And me. Petrielli. Aye. We are adjourning at 10:19.